Nidoking, and to a lesser extent Nidoqueen, are some of the best Pokemon to use in a solo challenge, especially if you care about going as fast as possible. But their prior evolutions aren't the same. They lack the ground type, their move pools lack key coverage, and the poison type is fantastically bad. It's just terrible. Plus, the best and only poison move these Pokemon get is Poison Sting. Game Freak, why even make them poison types? What were you thinking? And what was I thinking? This is going to be the first video on my channel where I complete and rank runs for 6 different species. And it's going to get even more exhausting as I go because I really wanted to do my due diligence. But we'll get to that later. These are the rules for my solo challenges. Only my starter in battle, no items in battle, no glitches or exploits that sequence break with one exception, and no evasion boosting moves, with one exception as well. My goal is to beat the game as fast as possible with each of them, and I'll be ranking the species based on the real-time results I'm able to achieve. We'll start with first stages, work our way through middle evolutions, and then finish with the king and queen. I wrote a long intro for this video explaining why I decided to put all of these 6 Pokemon together, but I decided to cut it because simply it's boring. What you really want to see is me struggle to beat the champion's Alakazam with first stage poison types. Plus, I don't need to justify this video's existence. This is my channel, I can do whatever I want. But in case you're curious, here's a quick summary of my creative decision making. I've got to re-rank king and queen at some point because the results are really stale in the tier list. I've done videos with the Nidorans before, but I haven't done follow-up playthroughs with either of them, so I never ranked them. I also have never played Nidorino or Nidorina before, so I'll have to do both first playthroughs and follow-up playthroughs with them at some point. The first stages and middle evolutions are so similar that it didn't make sense to make 2 separate versus videos, and it made even less sense to split them all into 4 individual solo videos, so those 4 species had to go in the same video. There was no other way around it. Finally, I could have just streamed re-ranks with Nidoking and Nidoqueen, but they're so different from their prior evolutions that the comparison between all of these species in the evolutionary lines became of great interest to me. Consequently, this is the ultimate Pokemon Yellow Nido comparison video. Today we're going to answer really important questions, like which one is the best? It's Nidoking. We all know it's Nidoking. The more important question is, can it achieve results that maybe, just maybe, will beat Victreebel's top placement? And how close is Nidoqueen going to be behind it? Also, which of these Pokemon is the worst? It's Nidoran Female. Well, kind of. As you'll see, things didn't exactly go the way I expected them to, with any of these runs. Alright, we need a place to start, and I think it makes most sense to just go with the worst of these 6. At least, the worst in theory. But before we get into the Nidorans, I have to talk about this video's sponsor, Raycon. Recently, I got their bone conductive headphones. If you're like me in your mid-30s, this technology might be alien to you. Anyways, it uses off-ear audio, so you don't have anything in your ears, and that allows you to stay alert to the world around you, while still getting crystal clear music, podcasts, or calls. For me, this is perfect when I'm doing chores around the house and my wife occasionally needs to talk to me about very important things, like the latest horror book that she's reading or potentially a cute thing that one of our cats is doing. These headphones have 13 hours of battery life, they're IP68 waterproof and dustproof, making them perfect for workouts. I've always found with earbuds that they slip out of my ears as I'm doing physical activity and that's frustrating, but with these bone conductive headphones, they sit over the top of your ears and so that same slipping doesn't happen. And they also come with a 30-day happiness guarantee. Click the link in the description or go to buyraycon.com/ScottsThoughtsBC to get 20% off the bone conductive headphones. Thanks to Raycon for sponsoring this video. Now, let's get into the Nidorans. Considering design, the Nidorans are excellent first stage Pokemon. Aesthetically, they both have a unique appeal, and I could see why anyone would want to add one of them to their team. They have a medium slow growth rate just like starter Pokemon, so they level up quickly in the early game. And if you're playing Generation 1 where Brock is the first boss, they learn Double Kick at level 12, giving you a solution for his rock types. They don't take that long to evolve into their next stage, and then they can evolve into their final form as soon as you get to Mount Moon and pick up a Moonstone. Bug types might teach the player how evolution works, but they were intended to be boxed later into the game. Whereas with the Nidorans, they can be added to your team early on and then stay there for the rest of the playthrough. But that's because you're going to evolve them. Today, I'm not going to, and then it makes no sense to have them on your team, because these first forms are really not good Pokemon. For base stats, Nidoran Female has 55 HP, 47 attack, 52 defense, 41 speed, and 40 special. In Generation 1, its critical hit rate is 7.81%. Nidoran Female's base stat total is 235, and I bet you didn't know this, but Nidoran Male's is lower. but only by 2 points, so it's 233. However, its stats have the better distribution for a solo challenge. 46 HP, 57 attack, 40 defense, and special, 50 speed, giving it a 9.77% chance to crit in Generation 1. The differences between these stats are incredibly important for a solo challenge. Nidoran Male's 10 additional points in attack and 9 additional points in speed are going to come in very clutch for it throughout this run, whereas Nidoran Female's 9 additional HP and 12 additional defense are not really that important. As Nidoran Male beats the rival, you're going to notice that it almost levels up to 7 in this initial battle. That's because of the medium slow growth rate. Also, I got really lucky winning this one with only 2 hit points. Eevee is kind of a monster in this first battle. Anyway, the medium slow growth rate is great in the early game, but it slows down as we get towards the highest levels. At level 68, it starts leveling up slower than the medium fast growth rate, and that's a problem for these Pokemon, because to beat the game, I needed a very high level the last time I played both of them. As I mentioned in the intro, the poison type is not particularly strong defensively. It's weak to ground and psychic, as well as bug exclusively in Generation 1. It's immune to absolutely nothing, and it resists fighting, poison, and grass. Perhaps the 3 worst offensive types in this game. Grass types excel within Generation 1 solo challenges exclusively because they get Swords Dance and Sleep Powder. That is one potent combo. Their grass type moves don't really factor in. A lot of Pokemon like Victory Bell unlearn their grass moves before the final battles of the game, because using Body Slam and Swords Dance together is just the best way to play. While we're looking at the tier list, let's filter results and only show poison types. You can see that this typing is actually pretty good in Pokemon Yellow. The problem is, all of the highly ranked poison types are there because of their secondary typing, and then all of the mono poison types are in the bottom portion of the tier list. And that's unfortunate news for 4 of the Pokemon in today's video. As a first stage mono poison type, it looks like both of the Nidorans are destined for either the Surge or Bruno tier. In my previous playthrough with Nidoran Female, which I did as a collaboration with Van Man years ago, I got a time of 2 hours, 5 minutes, and 1 second. With 62 resets, I finished the game at level 75 with a game time of 5 hours and 53 minutes. And the champion's Alakazam walled me at the end of the game. It was absolutely brutal. Largely because Nidoran Female lacks the 9 speed points that Nidoran Male has. So coming back to this Pokemon, I made a goal. I want to make Alakazam as consistent as possible while also significantly beating my former time. Anything close to 2 hours is not going to be good enough for me. Now these two goals conflict with each other, because adding consistency to a playthrough always costs time. But I've learned a lot as a player, and I still think beating my former time isn't going to be an issue even if I'm playing consistently. As I step into the forest, we're just going to pause here, and we're going to quickly go back to the footage of the lab battle against the rival. I said this one was close for Nidoran Male, and for Nidoran Female it can be even worse. Defeating the rival here is not that likely. I was losing more often than I was winning, but I think it's critical to win here because the experience gained from this battle pushes you along towards Brock more quickly. I don't want to lose here, not gain the experience, and then have to fight extra trainers in order to fight Brock. So if I lose in the lab, I'm just going to restart the entire playthrough, which is a frustration that really only Nidoran Female has to deal with. Nidoran Male can lose occasionally in the lab, but it's not nearly as likely. The obvious strategy here is to level up to 12, get Double Kick, and then fight Brock. These are the trainers that best facilitate this. Bugcatcher 2, who has 2 Metapod and 1 Caterpie. Bugcatcher 15, who is the yellow version exclusive with a Caterpie and a Metapod, and then the mandatory Bugcatcher. That gets Nidoran Female to level 11. For the remaining experience, I can fight the junior trainer inside of Brock's gym. Now, with Nidoran Female, I did sometimes have issues fighting him and had to restart the playthrough because I would lose here. It's a bit frustrating that this is how things work out. As you can see in this playthrough, I got taken down to 4 hit points before I won. At least it only costs about 4 minutes of time to get to this point in the playthrough. Now, let's take on Brock with Double Kick. For Nidoran Female, I have to 3-shot the Geodude, which is 1 more turn than Nidoran Male has to spend here. The real problem in this battle is the Onix. If it goes for Bind over and over again, I'm going to lose because I'm slower, and if it uses Bide and I attack in with Double Kick, then there's the potential that it'll unleash energy and knock me out. Typically it takes Double Kick 4 turns to knock out the Onix, but I do have a 27.5% chance to 3 turn. Nidoran Female defeats Brock and gets itself a first gym split of 4 minutes and 39 seconds. Let's go back to Nidoran Male. Male. In my playthrough with it previously, Alakazam in the champion battle was also awful, but there's a move that I didn't want to use last time that is going to be able to solve it. My previous result was 1 hour 56 minutes and 28 seconds, so in this run I have the same two-part goal as I do with Nidoran Female. Get a consistent result against Alakazam and beat my former playthrough time significantly. I said earlier in the video that things didn't go exactly according to plan when I was playing these playthroughs, so there are going to be a few more in this video than I was initially anticipating. But that gives me a chance to show you a bunch of alternative strategies that I tried out along the way. For example, here in my Nidoran Male footage, I am doing something different in order to fight Brock. On the early routes of the game, I fight wild encounters. This is so once I reach the forest, I can then take on all 4 bug catchers. I overtrained fighting too many wild encounters, I only need to battle 1, and then when I beat the mandatory bug catcher, I'm going to be level 12 with double kick for Brock and I can skip the junior trainer. Interestingly enough, in this footage, I'm doing the strategies in the reverse order. I should be playing the wild battle strategy for Nidoran Female so I can avoid the junior trainer, making the early game slightly safer. Whereas Nidoran Male can fight the junior trainer, it's not worried about him. And battling trainers is always going to be faster than fighting wild Pokemon. But it doesn't matter what I do with Nidoran Male because in the early game it's always just going to be faster. At level 8 it learns Horn Attack, and because of that Nidoran Female can't keep pace with it. Also on Brock the damage ranges are better. While I don't outspeed the Onix, so there still is risk here, I 2-turn the Geodude and 3-turn the Onix. Nidoran Male gets a first gym split of 4 minutes and 36 seconds. Right now it's outpacing Nidoran Female by 3/4 of a minute. And in the next section of the game, it's only going to build on this lead. On Route 3, I'm going to fight optional trainers. This is to gain experience towards my level at the end of the game, which is going to be very high for both of these Pokemon. Defeating these 6 trainers takes Nidoran Female a total of 26 turns in the worst case scenario. Whereas with Nidoran Female, fighting the same 6 trainers in the worst case scenario, it takes 38 turns. Because of Nidoran Female's base speed deficit, it's going to need to finish the game at a higher level. And as I just demonstrated, the training to get it to a high level takes more time than with Nidoran Male. Because of this, it's clear that the 2 results between these Pokemon should differ widely. I would be very surprised if they end up within 10 minutes of each other. Inside Mount Moon, I'm going to continue fighting trainers because for this playthrough, my target level at the end of the run is 82. While I'm doing this training, I want to talk about these Pokemon's move pools. Through TM and HM, Nidoran Female gets access to Toxic, Body Slam, Takedown, Double Edge, Blizzard, Rage, Thunderbolt, Thunder, Mimic, Double Team, Reflect, Bide, Skull Bash, Rest, and Substitute. The only difference between the Nidoran's TM sets is the fact that Nidoran Male gets access to Horn Drill, and this is another big advantage for Nidoran Male. It has the option to cheese its way through really difficult enemy Pokemon. With Nidoran Female, I fought almost every trainer in Mount Moon, skipping the guy with Weedle and Kakuna by the door, as well as the rocket that's down the first ladder. Then when I beat Jessie and James, Nidoran Female is level 21. I continue my training inside of Misty's gym, fighting the swimmer and the junior trainer, but I'm going to backtrack for Misty because Nidoran Female can't beat her right now. I underspeed both of her Pokemon. Nidoran Female has a pretty good matchup against the rival. A 2-turn on the Spearow, a 3-turn on the Sandshrew, which is the worst part of this fight despite being level 23, so I am exposed to the risk of Sand Attack. But the following Rattata is a one-shot, and the Eevee I have a 55% chance to knock out in 1 turn. Okay, Route 24, this has got to be one of the most frustrating parts of the game for first stage Pokemon in Generation 1. There are so many trainers that can mess you up. In this case with Nidoran Female, Supersonic from a Zubat causes me to take a blackout. The only way around this would be to train to a level that I can one-shot this Zubat, and obviously that is not the correct play. On Route 25, I'm going to add 3 optional trainers. The guy with Onix, the Seismic Hiker, and the Sandshrew youngster just before the Oddish Lass. Fighting Misty is technically a little bit easier now for Nidoran Female. It has 39 speed and it's going to move first against Staryu, but I still don't think this is good enough to take her on. She's going to be much easier if I first go to the SS Anne. By doing this, I can grab Rest, Body Slam, the Gentleman Candy, add in this Jigglypuff Lass in the Gentleman's Room, that gives level 29 for Rival 3. And now that I have Body Slam, his team is extremely easy to take care of. I'm not over the damage rounding threshold at level 30 yet, and I wanted to make Misty as safe as possible. So I go to Route 11 and continue my training. I'm going to go past level 30 here, fighting the trainers that have decent experience yields. There are 6 people that I battle here, and defeating them brings Nidoran Female partway through level 31 before I head back for Misty. I outspeed and have a guaranteed 1 hit on the Staryu, but Nidoran Female underspeeds Starmie. Bubble Beam has a 71.6% chance to 4-hit KO, so Nidoran Female's damage ranges need to knock out Starmie faster than that, and right now they do. Body Slam has a 28.5% chance to 2-hit KO if she doesn't use an X-Defend, and if she does, then she's replaced one of her turns to potentially use Bubble Beam with the defensive item, so I'm still gonna knock her out in time. There is another way to approach this battle, but I'll discuss that later. This approach with Body Slam and overtraining is by far the most consistent way to get through this fight. But I'll once again reiterate, consistency sacrifices time. Nidoran Male is going to continue pulling further ahead during the Misty split. In Mount Moon, it only needs to fight 5 trainers. I take on the Clefairy last just because I have double kick, then the Super Nerd over by the Rare Candy, and finally the Hiker before going down the ladder. Defeating the mandatory trainers at the end of the cave gives me level 20 for the rival battle. These damage ranges are almost identical to Nidoran Female's, which was 3 levels higher. A 2-hit on the Spearow, a 3-hit on the Sandshrew, a 1-hit on the Rattata, and a 2-hit on the final Eevee. That's the only range that's worse. And Nidoran Male is more consistent throughout Route 24 and 25 because it has access to Horn Attack. The Zubat, for example, with Supersonic is less scary because I have a more powerful move. Also, unlike Nidoran Female, I'm going to be doing minimum battles on these 2 routes. But like Nidoran Female, I'm going to be doing the SS Hand first before Misty. I want Rest, Body Slam, the Gentleman Candy, but I'm not going to fight the last, saving a little bit of time. Again, Rival 3 is easy with Body Slam, and I'm going to cut all of the Route 11 training, heading back to Misty at level 28. By the way, what's this blackout in Nidoran Male's footage? I went back and I checked, and it's just an error from my overlay that I didn't catch when filming the run, so now it's in the footage for good. This reminds me of the last time we did a Nidoran video on this channel. We had so many problems behind the scenes. My editor and I had to re-render the video like 10 times, and there were still problems that caused us to miss an entire week of releases, which is the only time this has ever happened in the history of my channel. And behind the scenes in this video, we are also experiencing a bunch of problems because this footage is not in a good state. I'll make sure to remove that blackout before we tally up the final results of these runs. Misty with Nidoran Male is solid at level 28. Outspeed on Staryu, an 86.1% chance to one-shot, and then a 3-hit KO on Starmie when it doesn't use X-Defend. If it does get X-Defend, then I have to 4-shot. Bubble Beam has a 61.1% chance to 3-hit KO, but Nidoran Male could also critical hit. It could paralyze the Starmie, and the Starmie can just go for bad moves like Tackle or Water Gun. I end this fight with a critical hit, and Nidoran Male gets a Misty split of 16 minutes and 59 seconds. The gap between these two is significant now. Nidoran Female's split was 22 minutes and 35 seconds. I'm gonna fight Surge right away, and this is not the most consistent fight. Nidoran Male has a 3-shot with Body Slam. The question is there a Thunderbolt risk? It's gonna 2-shot Nidoran Male unless it gets a critical hit. Its base damage range is 58 to 70%, and 108 to 127 with a crit. Unfortunately today, Surge goes for Mega Kick on turn 1, I paralyze with Body Slam, I follow this up with a non-crit, and then he uses Thunderbolt KOing Nidoran Male. In the next battle, Thunderbolt caused paralysis right away. Are you kidding me? Nidoran Male's Body Slam paralyzes, and then Raichu follows up its great turn 1 with a Growl, throwing the fight. Okay, Rock Tunnel Gauntlet. Here I'm going to teach Thunderbolt in the place of Tackle. For the Wrapping Lass, I need to save. I have a 23.6% chance to OHKO the Oddish. Because of that, there's the possibility for Wrap and Stun Spore to pair together and cause a reset, or just waste a ton of time. I like resetting if I get hit by Stun Spore on turn 1, and play it out if I don't. Even if I get Stun Spored on the second Oddish, usually most Pokemon can still win. For Slowbone, it is so important to save whenever using a first stage poison type. Cubone has Bone Club, and Nidoran Male has a 3-hit KO with Body Slam. Plus, once it makes it by Cubone, then I have to deal with Slowpoke, which has Confusion. This is why I taught Thunderbolt right after Surge. Both of the Nidorans have an easy solution for the self-destructing Hiker because they have access to Double Kick. I do want to mention here just in passing that in Red and Blue that is not the case, and they need to manage the self-destructing Hiker in different ways. Nidoran Male can get by his Pokemon by keeping Leer and using it in combination with Body Slam. Also, teaching Rest is a possibility. Nidoran Female lets the self-destructing Hiker play into his name. Growl, then Rest, and simply wait. It's nice that in yellow version we don't have to do these annoying strategies. On Route 8, I'm going to continue my optional training. This Super Nerd, this Gambler, it's important here to get one-hit KOs on his Pokemon, otherwise Hypnosis can be a risk. Finally, I take on this Super Nerd, and then I head into the mid-game. A key to safe play for the Nidos is exploring the Rocket Hideout and picking up the TM for Double Edge. The extra rare candy found here is also important. Anytime you want to finish the game above level 70, you want to pick up at least 11 rare candies, sometimes the 12th in the power plant, but that one costs a lot of time. In the department store, I buy 4 absolutely critical Carbos for Nidoran Male. The rival in Pokemon Tower isn't a threat, but the Chandler can be, since Thunderbolt is my only option against their Ghastly, and the damage ranges aren't good here. Nidoran Male has a 49.6% chance to 2-shot and a guaranteed 3-hit. Next I'm going to go to Erica's gym, and I'm going to do training here. This is something in modern runs that I almost never do. The experience yields in this location of the game are just not very good, but when I'm training a weak poison type and I need such a high level at the end of the game, I need to soak up experience wherever I can. Defeating all the trainers in the gym gets Nidoran close to level 38, and this is more than enough for Erica. Body Slam is what makes this fight possible at a lowish level. When I knock out the Tangela, Nidoran Male has the chance to learn Horn Drill. In this playthrough, I skipped it. Note that for later. The following Weepinbell and Gloom can be annoying because Erica has good AI. She views all of her moves as not very effective against Nidoran Male, so she's gonna randomize. This gives her the chance to use Sleep Powder, and that can cause a loss if I get very unlucky. But the fact I'm 2-shotting her final 2 Pokemon means I should wake up in time and knock them out, because Nidoran Male doesn't take very much damage from her attacks. With Erica out of the way, I go through Cycling Road, complete the Safari Zone, grabbing the Carbos on my way. Then I battle the trainers in the Fighting Dojo, which is another location I usually cut from these playthroughs. But today I need the training, and I'm also going to fight pretty much everyone inside of Sylph. This is the major training section of the game for Nidoran Male. By the time I'm fighting Rival 5, Nidoran Male is level 49. Being over-leveled here doesn't mean there's no risk. One thing that the first stage Nidorans lack, that later stages of this evolutionary line have, are good coverage for Sand Slash. Sand Attack can lower my accuracy, then I take damage against Magneton while missing a bunch. I outspeed Kadabra and I can obviously one-shot, but then Nidoran Male misses on Flareon and I get a loss because of accuracy. That's the second reset for this playthrough. I really wish that Nidoran Male had a way to quickly knock this Sand Slash out, but it just doesn't have anything. Giovanni and Sylph is pretty annoying because we lack coverage against the Nidoqueen. We just have to use normal type moves here. This is a moment where a move like Water Gun or Bubble Beam would be extremely helpful. Nidoran Male pulls through this fight with only 1 hit point. And you know that a Pokemon is bad when it overtrains in the mid-game and still struggles against Giovanni and Sylph. In the Fuchsia City Gym, I fight both the Tamers. My goal level here is 53 for Koga. This battle is definitely sketchy. Nidoran Male wants to 2-shot all of the Venonats. This still comes with major risk. The Venonats are most likely going to be using Psychic, which does between 26 and 36% damage depending on which Venonat is using it and what they roll for damage. The second one can go for Psybeam, which gives me a little bit of upside, but then Venomoth does between 62 and 73% damage with its Psychic. Here, I'm relying on the fact that Koga, with his good AI, can also choose Leech Life, which is super effective against Nidoran Male. If the Venomoth never uses Psychic, then I can knock it out with Body Slam in 3 turns. If the Venomoth does go for Psychic, I'm probably just gonna lose. And in this battle I get very lucky. Venomoth outspeeds, uses Leech Life, I paralyze it with Body Slam, and then Nidoran Male gets a critical hit. I wonder if you're able to spot a strategy that would make this battle a little bit easier for Nidoran Male. I'll talk about it later. For now, I'm gonna stop talking about experience rooting. It's a little bit messy from here on out because I kept forgetting which trainers to fight. There are just so many optionals in these routes. Anyways, let's switch back to Nidoran Female and see how it deals with the mid-game. The Rock Tunnel Gauntlet is largely the same between these two, but I get unlucky with Nidoran Female losing to the self-destructing Hiker. Graveler even got a critical hit with its final self-destruct. This is reset number 1 for Nidoran Female. In Celadon City, it's the same stuff. Double Edge, Rare Candy, buy Carbos because they're very important, and then I backtrack to Surge, which is different from Nidoran Male. So why would I make this choice when it's definitely not as time efficient? Due to the time I have to spend walking back to Vermilion City since Surge's badge damage allows fly outside of battle? Well, the answer's pretty simple. When I was testing, I had a ridiculous number of resets trying to beat Surge with Nidoran Female, and it didn't feel like a good approach to this section of the game to fight him earlier at a lower level. Backtracking now means Nidoran Female is level 37, and Body Slam has a guaranteed 2-hit, with its lowest damage range being 51% of Raichu's health. If I had decided to fight him after Misty, then I would have to 3-hit KO his Raichu, giving it another chance to attack with Thunderbolt. This is also a good example of Nidoran Female just being a really slow Pokemon, because it underspeeds Raichu even at level 37. That said, if we want to save as much time as possible with Nidoran Female, fighting Surge after Misty is going to be the best play, although it is possible then to have to restart a run if you lose to Surge too many times. If, theoretically, I came back to do Nidoran Female again, I would play him after Misty, trying to be a little bit riskier to save additional time. Another consequence to this choice to delay Surge is that I don't have Thunderbolt throughout the Rock Tunnel section of the game. This can be impactful on the Slowpoke, since Thunderbolt is a 2-shot, whereas Body Slam is a 3-shot. Pokemon Tower is next for Nidoran Female. The rival is pretty simple, and the Chandler should technically be easier. The Nidorans share the same base special stats, so Thunderbolt will be doing the same amount of damage provided they're at the same levels. But Nidoran Female has been doing more training throughout the mid-game, because it needs a higher level at the end. So because of this, it should have an easier time against the Chandler, but I get unlucky here, having another reset. This is just pure bad luck, because Nidoran Female was outspeeding the Ghastly. I just got paralyzed, then confused, and everything fell apart. This could have happened to Nidoran Male. Following Pokemon Tower is a rare occurrence in one of my modern routes. I go back to the department store and purchase myself an additional Carbos to improve Nidoran Female's speed. Then, on Cycling Road, I skip all of the trainers, which are really great experience. The reason I'm doing this is because I don't want to gain too much speed stat experience. Once your Pokemon reaches 25,600 stat experience in any given stat, then you can no longer use vitamins. But if you're 1 point below that threshold, you can still use a vitamin and it will contribute its full effect, which is 2,560 points towards your stat experience. On the other side of Cycling Road, I can do some training, which doesn't put me over the stat threshold. That's these 3 bird keepers by this patch of grass. Then inside the Safari Zone, I pick up 1 more Carbos, and I use this one, which does push me over the threshold. It's unfortunate that Nidoran Female won't be able to make use of the overworld Carbos that comes from Pokemon Mansion, but I couldn't root it out to be able to beat Koga early enough for that to be possible with all of the additional training that I want to do. If you want the experience, it's always going to be more time efficient to fight the trainers when you're in that location rather than backtracking later. And for some trainers, like the people inside of Erica's gym, I'm not going to be able to backtrack later, so I fight them now before taking on the 4th gym leader. Erica is not difficult, I resist her moves. I'm going to now break the principle that I mentioned before and backtrack to Cycling Road to do training. I fight almost everyone here. The reason that this backtrack makes sense is just to squeeze in the extra Carbos. If I can use 1 more vitamin and prevent a late game level up, then I will save more time than the backtracking costs in this one instance. After that, we fight the trainers in Dojo, and then go to Sylph with the goal level of 53. This is extremely extended, exhaustive training. Recently, I was going to an Asian supermarket with my wife, and she looked at me and she said, you know, I can carry the bags, it's okay. And I said, no, I feel bad when you carry the bags. And she said, well, I'm the one that goes to the gym, so I should probably carry the bags. And then I looked at her and I said, hey, on most days, I go to 8 gyms. I was very pleased with this joke. Anyways, if you saw me in real life, you would know that I'm familiar with exhaustive training. Let's talk about Rival 5 at level 53. I have a 3-hit KO on the Sandslash, which is unfortunate. I wish there was a faster way for Nidoran Female to do this, but there really isn't. Luckily with Thunderbolt, I have a 1-shot on the following Cloyster, a 2-shot on the Magneton, a 1-shot and a carefully considered outspeed on the Kadabra, and a 2-hit KO on the Flareon. This is an instance where the higher level for this fight compensates for Nidoran Female's lower attack relative to Nidoran Male. The battle against Giovanni is essentially the same between these two Pokemon. This is where I changed my strategy. After defeating Giovanni, I go north and pick up the Mimic TM. Then I head into the Saffron City Gym and defeat Psychics for experience, but I'm not going to fight Sabrina right now. Instead, I'm going to go to the Fuchsia City Gym and defeat the Tamers. Notice I have taught Mimic to Nidoran Female, so its moveset right now is Body Slam, Thunderbolt, Mimic, and Double Kick. And Mimic is going to be used for more consistency against Koga. I can steal Sleep Powder from the first Venonat and then put all 3 Venonat to sleep so that each one of them is not going to inflict damage to Nidoran Female. Even though the Venomoth is faster, it could go for Leech Life, and on turn 1, I'm going to use Sleep Powder. If it falls asleep, I'm probably going to win this because Body Slam Slam has a 3-shot KO. This clearly should have been my strategy with Nidoran Male as well. The next section of the game is brutal for the Nidorans. For Nidoran Female, I'm going to invest a serious amount of time training now. Route 21, Cinnabar Mansion, Route 20, Route 19. I grabbed the rare candy from the power plant and finished my training in the Cinnabar gym. My goal of all this training is to be level 66 prior to facing Giovanni. I want to use rare candies then, but not now. At level 64, it's a little bit too soon, and that means we need to beat Blaine at this level. He leads with Ninetales, and I have a 31.6% chance to 2-shot with Body Slam. I have a 55.9% chance to 2-shot the Rapidash, and I have a 41% chance to 3-shot the Arcanine, and that's if it doesn't use Reflect. And I want it to use Reflect so that it's not attacking. One of the reasons that Blaine is such a strong gym leader in Pokemon Yellow is because there's no good move to mimic from his team. The best 3 options are Confuse Ray from the Ninetales, Fire Spin from the Rapidash for a trapping move, or potentially Stomp for flinches and just direct normal type damage. Obviously, Stomp doesn't make sense when I have Body Slam, Fire Spin is inaccurate, 70%, and Confuse Ray is just not that good. What I'm hoping for here with Nidoran Female is to just get 2 shots on his first 2 Pokemon, hopefully then Paralyze or Critical Hit the Arcanine, and I hope that it just uses Reflect or misses moves like Fire Blast and Takedown. In this playthrough, I was pretty happy with my result against Blaine. I lose to him in my first attempt, but then the second time around, I critical hit the Arcanine and then he uses Reflect on his final turn in battle, so I knock out his ace in 3 turns. Finishing Blaine now gives Nidoran Female the special boost, so it's going to take less damage from Sabrina's Pokemon. Also, level 64 is enough here because I outspeed the Abra as well as the Kadabra, but the Alakazam is still going to move first. There's some luck involved in this fight, but Sabrina is nowhere near as difficult as Blaine. Sometimes the Alakazam can just go for things like Recover on turn 1 and do absolutely nothing. Then on turn 2 it goes for Psychic and we see it does roughly 3/4 in damage. It drops my special as well, giving me the outspeed, so I would be able to use 2 Body Slams in a row, but just 1 is enough. Inside the Viridian City gym, I continue fighting optional trainers. Once I reach level 66, I use 11 rare candies, boosting Nidoran Female to level 77 before Giovanni. It's here I'll mention the one exception I have to my double team rule. I am allowed to use double team if I steal it from a Pokemon using Mimic. This is a Generation 1 exclusive exception that I have for myself, and it's now grandfathered in from the early days of these solo challenges when I first realized that it was a possibility because I had used the wording no TM32 until level 100. Well, I'm not using TM32, I'm stealing double team with Mimic. By the time I banned evasion moves from level up sets, I had realized that it was a little bit too late to remove this strategy from the game, since so many poison, electric, and fire types rely on it to get by Giovanni. And believe me, they still don't place particularly well in the tier list even with this help. It's the obvious choice for Nidoran Female. Steal Persian's double team, set up to +6, and then sweep his team. Without the badge boosts from double team, I have a 1-shot on the Dugtrio, an 83.5% chance on the Persian with double kick, and then it gets unfortunate. I have 3-hit KOs on the Nidoqueen, the Nidoking, and the Rhydon, which is unacceptable because all 3 of these Pokemon have Earthquake. After double team badge boosts me 6 times, I have a 1-shot on Persian, a 2-shot on Nidoqueen, a 40.2% chance to 1-shot the Nidoking, and a 2-shot on Rhydon. This fight can still result in a loss, but it's at least a lot better now that I've set up with double team. In this playthrough, I have no resets to Giovanni. Following the trend from these playthroughs, Nidoran Male is going to train less prior to Blaine. I fight him 6 levels lower at level 58, and this did not go well. I lose 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times before finally on my 10th attempt against Blaine, I'm able to defeat him. This luck is roughly equivalent to what Nidoran Female has against Blaine, by the way. I have a 3-shot on Ninetales, Rapidash, and a 4-shot on Arcanine, with upside for 2 shots and a 3-shot. Now there might not be a way to make this more consistent with Nidoran Female, but there certainly is with Nidoran Male. As you can see with a higher base speed at a lower level, Nidoran Male is essentially equivalent to Female at level 59 when facing Sabrina. It has the exact same speed stat. Unfortunately, I get unlucky here. Nidoran Male is getting all the bad luck in the late game, whereas Nidoran Female got the bad luck in the early game. I lose 2 times to the Psychic type specialist before I defeat her. Again, damage ranges here are equivalent. 1-shots on both Abra and Kadabra with outspeeds, and a 2-shot on the Alakazam with an underspeed. Inside the Viridian City Gym, I don't even have to do optional training with Nidoran Male. I get to level 60 on the first mandatory trainer, and from there I use 8 rare candies to boost to level 68 before facing Giovanni. I made a very quick player error here, starting to fight Giovanni, and then I realized I need Mimic for this one. It has to be double team. That's the solution for first stage poison types. Damage ranges here for Nidoran Male are slightly worse than Nidoran Female, just because my level is so much lower. I have the 2-shot Nidoqueen, Nidoking, and Rhydon. So the difference is Nidoking, which Nidoran Female has a chance to 1-shot. The disappointing trend continues. Rhydon hits with Earthquake, but Nidoran Male should survive 1 hit from one of his 3 final Pokemon, especially because it's set up with badge boosts from Double Team. However, Rhydon gets a critical hit, so it bypasses all of these stat increases, and as a result it 1-shots Nidoran Male. What is this bad luck? The end of the mid-game has been absolutely atrocious for Nidoran Male. At least I beat Giovanni on my next attempt, and I don't have 9 resets to him like I did at Blaine. Both of the first stage Nidorans are going to grab the Power Plant candy. I'll talk about this one more later. It's really annoying to have to grab it because it costs so much time. It's roughly 35 to 45 seconds, depending on what you do here inside of the Power Plant, because there are other options that I could potentially pick up. The rival on Route 22 is easier than the previous incarnations of these fights because his Sandslash doesn't have Sand Attack, so even though I have to 3-shot, it's fine. Then if Execute doesn't hit with Stun Spore, the remainder of the battle's pretty simple. Thunderbolt for Cloyster, which is a 1-hit, Body Slam for Magneton, which is a 2-shot, pray it doesn't use Thunder Wave here, and then I can 1-shot Kadabra and 2-shot Flareon. In Victory Road, I need to do enough training to get Nidoran Male to level 71. This allows me to use the final 4 rare candies to boost it up to level 75 before facing Lorelei. Thunderbolt just has enough damage for this fight. A 2-shot on Dugong, Slowbro, as well as Lapras, and it 1-shots Cloyster, and Body Slam has a 90.7% chance to knock out Jinx in a single hit. Also, Dugong is more likely to prioritize rest because we're a poison type. Cloyster is irrelevant because we have Thunderbolt. Slowbro with Psychic is going to do about half damage to Nidoran, and both Blizzard and Hyper Beam from Lapras do between 33 and 39% damage. In the case of this battle, I get to the Lapras without taking a single hit point in damage, and then the Lapras gets a critical hit, but this still isn't enough to knock out Nidoran Male. Mimic is useful against the Hiker to steal Dig, so I have better damage against the rock types. Yeah, that's all I have to say about him in this video. He's really bad, as usual. Before Agatha, I need to make one update for my set, which is teaching Blizzard in the place of Double Kick. This is the only Ice-type move that the first Nidorans can learn, and it's also one of 2 moves that I can use to knock out Ghost Pokemon. I also ensure that I use PP ups on it so that I have 8 uses for this fight, because my damage with base 40 special is pretty low. To ensure that I can attack the number of times that I need to, I'm going to set up defensively mimicking Substitute, and then I go to town with Thunderbolt and Blizzard. Finally, luck is going Nidoran Male's way, and I pull through with a victory against Agatha on my first try. For Lance, I have Thunderbolt and Blizzard, 1-shot Gyarados, 1-shot both Dragonairs, 1-shot the Aerodactyl. By the way, I can choose between Blizzard and Thunderbolt here. Thunderbolt does have a slightly lower chance, 74.5%, but Blizzard could always miss, so they're pretty close to each other. Obviously, Dragonite takes 4 times damage, so if the Dragonairs were 1-shots with Blizzard, this one will be too. And now, Nidoran Male has arrived at the most difficult trainer of this run. I teach Rest in the place of Mimic, and Double Edge in the place of Body Slam. Now, let's see how this strategy synergizes to crush his team. Blizzard is going to one-shot the Sandslash in a single turn, avoiding Earthquake's 65 to 77% damage. Then for Alakazam at level 77, Double Edge has a 79.2% chance to one-shot. And because of the Carbos I used earlier in the playthrough, as well as the level I needed to get the one-shot with Double Edge, Nidoran Male is easily able to outspeed the Alakazam, avoiding Psychic's 70 to 83% damage. From there, everything gets easier. Executor is going to want to spam Hypnosis, but I can two-shot it using Blizzard. Double Edge is pretty good against Magneton. Since I'm a poison type, it's going to randomize between its moves, and it can use bad things like Swift or Screech. In this case, it just misses the status move and I knock it out. Cloyster goes down to 2 Thunderbolts. The champion's is high enough levels to survive, but I'm not too worried about its moves, because no matter how much damage I take here, provided I survive, the Flareon is going to do nothing. It knows Reflect, which is a psychic move, and it's just going to spam this against poison type Pokemon. So if I make it this far in the battle, I've won. Nidoran Male finishes Pokemon Yellow with a time of 1 hour 13 minutes and 15 seconds. With 15 resets, 1 blackout, remember there was an error earlier on, it finished the game at level 77 with a game time of 4 hours and 29 minutes. So goal accomplished for Nidoran Male, I was able to completely crush its former time. That said, I am not happy with this playthrough. The fact that I lost to Blaine so many times is definitely a stain on this result. For the end of the game, Nidoran Female is almost identical to Nidoran Male. The only difference is it's going to be doing all of these battles at a higher level to make up for its deficit in attack and speed. In Victory Road, I trained to 80. I've used up pretty much all of my rare candies until now. I only have 1 left over in my bag. And I'm going to fight the Elite Four in its entirety without using it. I want to ensure that I have enough speed to move first against the Alakazam on the Champions team, otherwise all of this has been for nothing. It turns out when I level up to 81 during the Agatha fight, I had miscalculated things just slightly because of how much stat experience I was gaining during this run, and I already now have 157 speed, so the Alakazam is going to be possible. After Lance, I use my final rare candy, and then I fight the champion. Check out this bad luck. Turn 1, I miss my Blizzard. Sandslash goes for Earthquake because it always is going to. It gets a critical hit and one-shots Nidoran Female. Still, it's a quick reset, and I only have 4 in total. Plus, my damage ranges here against the champion are even better than Nidoran Male's were. When Blizzard hits, it's a guarantee on Sandslash. Double Edge also has a guarantee with its lowest possible damage being 101%. For Executor, 2-shot with Blizzard, 2-shot Magneton with Double Edge, Thunderbolt has a 62% chance to one-shot the Cloyster, and then Flareon is free. Nidoran Female gets a time of 1 hour 28 minutes and 57 seconds, with 4 resets, 1 blackout at level 82 with a game time of 5 hours and 46 minutes. That's 2 for 2 for me. I absolutely crushed my previous result. I am over half an hour faster this time with Nidoran Female. But then I started talking to Zealous Pawn after doing these 4 playthroughs, because I came back and did initial runs, and then I did these 2 playthroughs after solidifying my strategy. So with 4 playthroughs in the bag, I was a little bit resistant when he started talking to me about how we don't need to outspeed the Alakazam. What if we just survive Psychic and then paralyze it with Body Slam? And the more I thought about this, the more it ate away at me. Are we going to save a lot of time going for a strategy that potentially is much more inconsistent, but it's able to cut a ton of training from the game? After all, the trainers that I'm fighting in these runs are fundamentally inefficient. In the end, curiosity did get me, and I came back for more suffering. Let's play Nidoran Female and Nidoran Male again. What's possible if we finish the game at a lower level? Just how much can we reduce these playthrough times using a riskier strategy? Or will sacrificing consistency end up giving them worse results? Everything up to Brock is unchanged, but on Route 3 I start to make updates. I'm no longer going to be fighting a bunch of optional trainers. Instead, I'm doing minimum Pokemon here, fighting only the Lass. Then, inside of Mount Moon, I fight the Hiker for a little bit more experience, and once I reach Cerulean City, I take on both of the gym trainers before fighting the rival. This way, Nidoran Female can have level 20 before battling him. For more experience, I fight the Seismic Hiker on Route 25, and then I take on Misty. This is the Zealous Pawn special. We're going to be using Bide to knock out the Starmie with Nidoran Female. It is inconsistent, and I take a bunch of resets here, 3 in total, before everything lines up the way I need it to. Nidoran Female unleashes energy and one-shots Starmie, surviving the fight with 2 HP. Beating Rival 2, I had a lead of 1 minute and 54 seconds over my previous time, but now here at Misty, I have a 7-minute lead. On the SSN, Body Slam, Rest, and a rare candy, then I fight Surge without backtracking. This is fine, he's really bad, and even when he hits with Mega Kick, Nidoran Female still survives. No resets to him. In the department store, I buy 4 Carbos. Speed is important, but I'm not going to be outspeeding the Alakazam at the end of the game. I'm also going to purchase a bunch of Super Potions because these will be critical for doing mid-game training, preventing me from backtracking to the Pokemon Center. And now it's time to start that training on Cycling Road. I fight 6 trainers here. The Grimy Biker, the Wheezing Biker, the 2 people by the grass, the Cue Ball with fighting types heading south, and then the Biker Boss. Inside Erica's gym for experience, I fight the Cool Trainer, and then I battle battle a ton of trainers in Sylph. Machoke Candy, the Raticate Rocket with 4 Pokemon, the Reception Rocket with 4 Pokemon, the Calcium Scientist, the Stacked Scientist, this rocket that is by him with 2 Zubats and a Golbat, I hardly ever mention this guy. And another rare occurrence on the channel is the Juggler with Kadabra and Mr. Mime, the Protein Scientist, Mandatory Arbok, Triantist, Hypno Sandwich. Shout out to Serena Vale for the art, absolutely incredible as always. The Zubat Rocket, the Scientist with Magneton over by him, as well as the Grimy Scientist. Following this, I go into the Heal Room, fighting the Scientist with Weezing, as well as the Mandatory Rocket to get to that room. And then I even take on the Hypno Rocket. All of this training brings Nidoran up to level 46. Prior to the rival, I use 7 rare candies, boosting Nidoran Female to level 53. This battle is one of the most frustrating spots for Nidoran Female. Sandslash is such a nuisance. Having to knock it out in 3 turns gives it 2 opportunities for Sand Attack, and I can win with my accuracy lowered, it's just far less likely. In this first fight, I have 2 accuracy drops, and then the Magneton paralyzes. This ends up as a reset, and I have many more for a total of 10 in this run, but eventually I beat the rival. Inside Koga's gym, 2 Tamers. Then I fight Koga with the Sleep Powder strategy. This is so much better, no resets to him. Heading south from Pallet Town, I fight every trainer on this route except for the guy with a bunch of Magikarp. Inside Pokemon Mansion, I take on 1 additional Scientist, this guy with Electrode and Weezing, and then I make my way to the Power Plant, collecting 1 additional item to the rare candy. I'll talk about this later. Inside Blaine's gym, I fight 4 trainers, getting Nidoran Female to level 59, then I teach it Blizzard in the place of Double Kick, and use candies up to level 63. Blaine is honestly just brutal. Blizzard here is helpful because it gives me a chance to freeze his Pokemon, which increases Nidoran Female's odds of winning, especially if I freeze the Arcanine. I got pretty close on my first attempt, but then Nidoran Female was burned and Arcanine was able to hit with 2 Fire Blasts. I had 2 resets in this playthrough, and with Blaine defeated, I'm 13 minutes and 18 seconds ahead of my former time. That's even with 10 resets to Rival 5. You can see just how much time Nidoran Female had to invest in training in the previous playthrough. Sabrina is always going to be random with these Pokemon, but Nidoran Female is able to pull it off even with an underspeed on Kadabra. Inside Giovanni's gym, I fight 1 optional trainer, and then we're going to skip past some major battles into Victory Road. Here, I'm going to fight 3 trainers. The Starter Cool Trainer, the Chansey Cool Trainer, and Cool Water. That gives Nidoran Female level 67, and with my final rare candy, I bring it to level 68 before fighting Lorelei. Here's a tip against her. Don't get seduced and use Mimic against the Slowbro. Just attack with Thunderbolt and Body Slam and sweep her team. It still requires luck, but we don't want to give the Slowbro extra time. Blizzard makes the Hiker fairly easy. It's good against Agatha. I have some bad luck here, losing twice. Once against the final Gengar, which was really frustrating, but I'm able to win on my 3rd attempt. I don't really care about all of these resets. I had an unlucky Rival 5, but a very lucky Koga. Defeating him on my first attempt was amazing for this playthrough, because when Zealous Pond and I were working on this route, he had some really bad experiences against Koga. And as soon as I completed Lance, I am 15 minutes and 52 seconds ahead of my previous time. So as long as the champion doesn't completely ruin this run, I'm gonna get a better run with Nidoran Female. The strategy for him is pretty simple. I need to one-shot the Sandslash with Blizzard, move on to the Alakazam, and then when I underspeed, I will survive a hit from Psybeam or Psychic, and I can attack with Body Slam. I'm hoping I paralyze, and then attack with a second Body Slam, knocking out Alakazam before it attacks again. In my first run, I lost because it hit with Kinesis twice in a row. There is no point in playing that fight out. In the second attempt though, it goes for Psybeam, which doesn't do enough damage. However, it confuses Nidoran Female, so this one ends in a loss too. But 3rd attempt, I get what I need. I paralyze the Alakazam and knock it out in 2 hits. Now, look at my moveset. Blizzard, Body Slam, Rest, and Thunder. Thank you, Zealous Pond, for encouraging me to use this move. I thought it was never going to see play in a Generation 1 solo challenge, but for first stage Pokemon, it does have a use. If the early stages of the champion fight require a lot of luck, like it does here for Nidoran Female, then having a better damage range against the Cloyster can improve my odds of knocking it out in 1 turn, taking no damage from Clamp or Ice Beam. After using Rest on Exeggutor to heal, I then want to stall out the Magneton until it uses 1 turn of Screech. This will badge boost boost Nidoran Female and give it a 56% chance to knock out the Cloyster in one turn with Thunder. I get the damage range I need, his penultimate Pokemon goes down, and Flareon can't do anything. So I finish this run with a time of 1 hour 13 minutes and 42 seconds, with 20 resets at level 71 and a game time of 4 hours and 16 minutes. This playthrough was 15 minutes and 15 seconds faster than my other attempt. This is proof that trying to play consistently with Nidoran Female is just a mistake if your goal is the fastest possible playthrough. Zealous Pawn played a bunch of runs with Nidoran Female as well, getting times of 1 hour 21 minutes and 41 seconds, 1 hour 16 minutes and 49 seconds, and 1 hour 14 minutes and 14 seconds. After all of these results, it seems like Nidoran Female will struggle to cut down on the total number of resets. I'm sure someone can do a really lucky playthrough and get this time significantly lower if you go close to 0 resets, but that seems quite improbable, because to get this result we have to take a lot of risks. I played a similar route with Nidoran Male. Everything in the early game, like Bide for Misty, is all the same. However, when I make it to Erica's gym and fight the Cool Trainer, then Nidoran Male gets a key advantage. I've been whining about a bunch of Pokemon up until now in the video, and I can just solve them by teaching Horn Drill in the place of Horn Attack. For example, against Erica, I can use Horn Drill to knock out her Tangela in one hit instead of having to two-shot. That's a little bit more convenient. The rival in Sylph is so much easier than he is with Nidoran Female because I can simply Horn Drill down the Sandslash. Even if I miss once, I two-shot, where Nidoran Female has to three-hit. As a result, Nidoran Male pulls through this fight with no resets. That's a massive advantage for it. Sleep Powder for Koga. This fight, of course, is inconsistent. I lost once today, but I'm not too worried about that. For Blaine, I have Horn Drill. It's not great against his Ninetales and Rapidash, but it's perfect for the Arcanine. Instead of taking multiple turns to knock it out, I just click this move, delete it in one turn, and then move on to the late game. We're gonna skip ahead to the champion. For Nidoran Female, the key damage ranges were surviving Alakazam's Psychic, which does between 74 and 88% damage when Nidoran Female is level 70, and then having a good chance to knock out the Cloyster using Thunder. Nidoran Male can play the exact same strategy fighting the champion at level 70. The difference in this playthrough is just that the mid game is so much easier with Horn Drill. Then I rely on Body Slam for the Alakazam, it paralyzes after one reset, and then I sweep the champion's team, taking a Screech on Magneton, using Thunder for the Cloyster. If I went back in time 3 or 4 years ago and told myself that Nidoran Male could get this time, I would have told myself that I was a liar or a cheater. In this run, I got a time of 1 hour 2 minutes and 46 seconds, with 6 resets, 1 blackout, finishing the game at level 71 with a game time of 3 hours and 58 minutes. It's 10 minutes and 29 seconds faster than the more consistent strategy that I played previously. Putting the results of these two Pokemon side by side, Nidoran Male was 10 minutes and 55 seconds faster. It had 14 less resets, but 1 more blackout. I had one early on in the game, it's not worth talking about. With these Pokemon, when you accidentally lose to a trainer, you just keep playing because these runs take so long. They finished the game at the same level, but Nidoran Male was faster in game time by 18 minutes. If we look at the timelines for these two playthroughs, you can see how Nidoran Male is just a little bit faster early on into the game, and then these advantages start to build up throughout the mid-game. We can also see that on the real time by trainer graph, where its advantage is small in the early to early mid-game, and then by the later stages of the mid-game when we have Horn Drill, things really speed up. This is because Nidoran Female got such a bad split on Rival 5. Are you all ready to move on from the first stage Nidorans? I know that I am, so let's rank them with their best results in the tier list. Nidoran Female was able to earn itself an F tier placement ahead of a bunch of other mono poison types, so this is a pretty good result for it. Nidoran Male, on the other hand, was able to beat out Pokemon like Chansey and Raichu and earn itself an E tier position. With the first stage Nidorans finished, it's time to move on to the middle evolutions. For these two Pokemon, I'm going to use my regular format. So we're going to see my first playthrough, and then I'm going to optimize, and I'll show you how I was able to make their results better. This is because I've never played these species before on the channel. They are very similar to their first stage counterparts. They're mono poison types, the stat distributions are very similar, and the move pools are almost the same, with 3 notable additions: Bubble Beam, Water Gun, and Ice Beam. For base stats, Nidorino has 61 HP, 72 attack, 57 defense, 65 speed, and 55 special special. It's got a 12.5% chance to crit in Generation 1. Nidorina has 70 HP, 62 attack, 67 defense, 56 speed, and 55 special. It has a 10.94% chance to crit. For the early game, all species in this evolutionary line can play the same way. Defeat enough trainers, get to level 12, and then fight Brock with double kick. Nidorina gets a time of 3 minutes and 46 seconds, whereas Nidorino with higher attack gets a time of 3 minutes and 34 seconds. The same asymmetry is present between these Pokemon as was with the first evolutions. Nidorino has Horn Attack and Nidorina doesn't. Inside Mount Moon, I could have picked up the Water Gun TM, which would give me super effective damage against the rival's Sandshrew, but I decided to skip it. But I still fought the Hiker using double kick to knock out his rock Pokemon quickly. I'm level 19 for the rival, and here Horn Attack just crushes his team. I have to 3-turn the Sandshrew. I do get hit by 2 turns of Sand Attack. It's really annoying, but I don't end up losing. Now for these first playthroughs with the middle evolutions, I had already completed all of my work on the first stages. Because of this, I know a lot of the tricks that these Pokemon can use to get better results. Against Misty, it just makes sense to go for Bide. 2-shot with Horn Attack on Staryu, then use Bide, and pay back massive damage. I 1-shot the Starmie and get a second gym split of 11 minutes and 43 seconds. With 15 points more base speed when compared with Nidoran Male, I thought that Nidorino would be able to outspeed the champion's Alakazam. But if it can't, I'm gonna need rest for him, so I decided to fight the Sailor on the SSN to get the TM, and the Tentacool confused me after surviving Horn Attack. On the Staryu, Nidorino hits itself, takes damage from Water Gun, snaps out of confusion, but Staryu lands one more tackle and Nidorino faints. I didn't anticipate that this would happen, I didn't save, so I do need to black out. I come back, get my revenge, and grab rest. Now, I could have fought this junior trainer and got access to Body Slam prior to fighting the Sailor, which would have given me a 1-shot on the Tentacool. Those are lessons that I'll apply later if I need rest with Nidorino. For the rival, I could really feel how much better it was when compared with Nidoran Male. Having access to Bubble Beam here gives me a 1-shot on the Sandshrew, so even this fight, which can slow down because of Sand Attack, doesn't have that possibility. All of the Nidos from here on out are just gonna crush this rival. Surge. If I was fighting him at level 28 with the first stage Nidos, then it doesn't make any sense to skip him and backtrack here later. He attacks with Mega Kick followed by Thunderbolt, and Nidorino still survives and 3 shots. With Nidorina lacking Horn Attack, I did pick up Water Gun for the rival's Sandshrew on Nugget Bridge. Bide for Misty, no resets as well, so this early game is feeling pretty good for both of these Pokemon. Unlike Nidorino though, even though the Tentacool does confuse me on the SSN, I don't have a loss to this Sailor. I tried a different, faster strategy for Surge, and that is to use Bide. Here are the reasons this is a faster strategy. Number 1, I don't have to reselect a move every turn, saving a few frames. Number 2, Bide has no chance to paralyze or crit, so it's not going to print extra text. Number 3, Bide is not affected by moves like Growl, so lowering my attack won't make me take longer to knock out the Raichu. And number 4, if Surge attacks Nidorina, which he does here with Thunderbolt, I just 1-shot. Unfortunately, the Wrapping Lass is still a little bit sketchy for Nidorina. I don't have a 1-hit on her first Oddish, but it looks like I can roll enough damage because I do 1-shot the second one. The Rock Tunnel Gauntlet is so much easier with the middle evolutions. Bubble Beam for the Cubone, Thunderbolt for the Slowpoke, and Bubble Beam for the self-destructing Hiker's team. With a mono poison type, I just don't think it's safe to skip the Rocket Hideout on a first playthrough. Maybe I'll be able to eliminate this region in a follow-up attempt, but I don't think that'll be the case. These Pokemon still aren't amazing. In the department store, I grab the TM for Ice Beam, purchase myself 2 Carbos to increase Nidorina's speed, and then I teach Ice Beam in the place of Bubble Beam. I have 2 types of super effective damage against the rival's Fearow. Thunderbolt is not able to 1-shot with Nidorina. That's a little unfortunate. Body Slam has to 2-hit the Magnemite, so it's slow, but from there everything's a 1-shot. Now, the middle evolutions have been doing significantly less training. Because of this, we still have to 2-shot the Ghastly on the Chandler's team. In this case, I actually have to 3-shot one of them, but there is a little bit of upside here since I'm using Ice Beam and I have a chance to freeze. This is much better than Paralysis from Thunderbolt, which the first stages had to use. I did some additional training on Cycling Road, and after I finished the Safari Zone, I dug back to Celadon City and decided to fight Erica. I went for this because of Ice Beam, but Ice Beam's not that good. I have to 2-shot all of her Pokemon with it. I have an upside for a freeze, but there's downside for her to go for Sleep Powder, which Gloom does. Then it's doing tiny amounts of damage with Petal Dance, but as long as I keep sleeping, there is the possibility that I lose. In the end, Nidorina wakes up with 10 hit points remaining and knocks out the gloom. I don't think this is when I should be doing this battle. So far things have been going really well with these two, but unfortunately just around the corner there are a lot of problems. I do training inside of Sylph to level up to 43 before I fought the rival. I thought that Ice Beam would give me a good solution for him since I was anticipating that I would 1 or 2 shot the Sand Slash. I get a critical hit here so it goes down in a single turn, but then Thunderbolt isn't able to one-shot the Cloyster. It uses Clamp, dealing 1/3 in damage before I knock it out. Now I really want to take a moment and bemoan the fact that none of the early evolutions of the Nidos get access to ground type moves. No Dig, no Earthquake, no Fissure. Also regarding these moves, Nido Queen and Nido King also have a quirk. I'll talk about that later on, it's also very frustrating. The Magneton isn't really a problem, but what I didn't anticipate here was the underspeed on Kadabra. It crits with Confusion and knocks Nidorina out. Because I didn't anticipate needing to be as high of a level with these Pokemon, I decided to use 2 rare candies here, ensuring that I'll now outspeed the Kadabra. With Body Slam, I can one-shot it and I defeat the rival on my next attempt. Giovanni and Sylph is easier with the middle evolutions with access to Ice Beam. Super effective special damage is especially helpful against his Rhyhorn. With Sylph completed, I stop by Copycat's house and pick up the TM for Mimic. I'm going to use this against Koga. Now, I had a lot of success in my previous 2 playthroughs with Nidoran Male and Nidoran Female. Let's see what happens with Nidorina. I wanted to go for a different strategy here since Nidorina has higher special. I wanted to leverage this by mimicking Psychic and using it for super effective damage against all of Koga's other Pokemon. The first battle is frustrating because Venonat goes for its own Psychic and drops my special, so I just decided to reset since my damage is now cut and I can't one-shot his lead. Second fight, special drop from the Venonat's Psychic. Third fight, another special drop from Venonat's Psychic. I'm losing my mind here, this is ridiculous. I messed up my RNG seed walking in the overworld and then tried again. This time no special drop from the Venonat. Psychic one-shots it, the second Venonat, as well as the third one, but that was a critical hit. I'm not sure that's a guarantee. Venomoth is last. I wanted to not go for Psychic, but unfortunately it does, doing a ton of damage, but Nidorina survives. With its Psychic, I'm able to do about half, then Venomoth uses Leech Life, healing a tiny bit, preventing me from knocking it out on the next turn. This allows Koga to roll for damage one more time, but he doesn't choose Psychic. He chooses Leech Life, which is a bug move, and it's super effective against poison types in Generation 1, and it gets a critical hit, knocking Nidorina out. This luck is just atrocious. Guess what happens? I get a special drop, and I get another special drop. That is 5 in total with Nidorina. Eventually though, I'm able to mimic Psychic without the special drop, make it back to the Venomoth, and this time I knock it out with 2 hits because Koga chooses to use an X attack. With Nidorino, I played the mid-game almost identically. Rival in Pokemon Tower, then Erica with Ice Beam. It works out better here for Nidorino because it gets paralyzed instead of put to sleep. I fought the rival in Sylph with slightly less experience, under a damage rounding threshold. I am not able to one-shot the Sandslash with Ice Beam, but I do freeze. Perfect. Then against Cloyster, I thought I was going to take damage, but I don't. It just whiffs a Supersonic, so it's free. I knock out the Magneton, but I do take damage here. And then after knocking out the Kadabra with the single Body Slam, since I am naturally faster than it, this is the advantage of being the male version of these species. You're just moving first and not having problems. Well, unless I just barely miss the damage range on the Flareon for a 2-shot, it lands Bite followed by Fire Spin and Nidorino faints. Okay, fine. It beat me because it got a critical hit with its Bite. When it doesn't, then I still have to 3-shot the Flareon, but I'm able to win. For Koga, I try the Psychic strategy with Nidorino again. I really wanted this to work, and in this case, I get a special drop on the first attempt. Are you kidding me? The Venonat survives because these Pokemon have the same base special stat. That's a reset. But here I get more lucky than I did previously. The second attempt, I don't have a special drop, and then I sweep Koga's team to the Venomoth. It goes for Leech Life, getting a critical hit, healing a lot, but then it just goes for a follow-up Leech Life, which also crits, but that isn't enough healing to save it from my final Psychic. South of Palatown, I did a bunch of additional training on Route 21 to level up before Blaine. For this battle, I think that the Horn Drill strategy against Arcanine is by far the best way to play it, so I'm going to use that tactic here again. Unfortunately, I get hit by a critical hit Fire Blast and lose once. I also get bad luck in the second fight against Blaine, but this really illustrates why Horn Drill is so good here against his Arcanine. He gets a burn with Flamethrower, but I don't care about my attack stat being cut. And so even with the status condition, I'm able to win. Okay, off to the races now. Sabrina's next. I just gotta luck through this one. Nidorino is almost able to outspeed her Alakazam. Once I defeat the Kadabra, I level up to 56, and I have 132 speed, 1 point less than her ace. But don't worry, she's really bad. She just goes for X Defend, followed by Reflect. This is annoying since I'm using Body Slam, but Nidorino just gets a critical hit, bypassing her stat changes, finishing off her ace. Just like with the Nidorans, for Giovanni, I'm going to use Blizzard in combination with Double Team. I can probably get through this battle with less than full setup. I went to +5, I figured this was enough, and then I swept his team. One-shots on Nidoqueen, Nidoking, and Rhydon using Blizzard. There was one downside against the rival before the league. I can one-shot the Sandslash, the Execute, and the Cloyster, but I have to two-shot or three-shot the Magneton, giving it a chance to paralyze. If only we were a ground type. But once it goes down, then the following Kadabra and Flareon are both pretty simple to manage. Inside Victory Road, I decided to fight no additional trainers. Nidorino had just leveled up to 59. And now I'm going to use Candies for it, bringing it up to level 65 before fighting Lorelei. Okay, miracles do happen. When Nidoran Female evolves into Nidorina, it gets access to Horn Drill, so I can use this move against Blaine, and in this case I luck through him with no resets. Nidorina continues to get lucky against Sabrina. I use the same strategy for Giovanni. Note here that my level is slightly higher than Nidorino's. I've fought a few more trainers in the mid-game. Unfortunately, I do get unlucky against the rival because Magneton paralyzes me. This causes one reset for Nidorina. Now, despite having a lower attack stat, I am 3-shotting the Magneton, and Nidorino was also 3-shotting. That's the thing about these two Pokemon. They are so similar, even more so than the first stage Pokemon. Those two are very different because low speed quantities cause significant problems throughout playthroughs. Nidorina and Nidorino have just enough speed that they're not really having significant problems. Well, until the late game. There's going to be a massive difference between these two because Nidorino is going to outspeed the champion's Alakazam and Nidorina is not going to. But to talk about that, first we need to get through the Elite Four. Lorelei is straightforward, just spam Thunderbolt. There's some downside here, but not too much. Dugong is probably going to go for rest. Cloyster, with a better damage range, we now put into Super Potion range, so it might never attack. I have a 2-shot on Slowbro with Thunderbolt, provided it doesn't go for first turn Amnesia, but even if it does, it's just going to use Amnesia again because of its AI on turn 2. Body Slam 2-shots Jinx, and then Thunderbolt 3-shots Lapras, which is a little bit unfortunate. Nidorina might need level 63 here for more consistency, but still I pulled through with green health in my first attempt. The Hiker is bad. I don't even know why I'm talking about him. What's the chance that he with fighting types gives these Pokemon resets? It's very, very low. Agatha, on the other hand, is truly awful for Nidorina. I underspeed the first Gengar by 6 points, as well as the final Gengar. The first one can confuse me, as well as paralyze with Lick, and this battle is a great example of the difference between the middle stages and their final stages. With access to Earthquake here, all of her Pokemon just fall apart, but without it, I have to use Blizzard and Thunderbolt to knock them out, which takes time. Gengar paralyzes me right away. I decided to not try to play this out and waste a bunch of time losing to the final Gengar. Joke's on me though, because in the very next fight, I did play it out. This time the Arbok paralyzes me, and because of that, I end up losing to the final Gengar again. The damage ranges here for Nidorina are just not good enough. I'm setting up Substitute to avoid status conditions from Lick, Confuse Ray, and Supersonic. Blizzard 2-shots the Golbat. The first Gengar takes a total of 4 turns to knock out unless I get critical hits. I do here, but with Thunderbolt, I still have to 4-shot. I have to 3-hit the Haunter, which has a chance then of using Hypnosis, which bypasses Substitute in Generation 1. Also, Agatha can use Super Potions and buy herself more time. Of course, I have the upside for freezes, and I really wish I could have just got one on the final Gengar to make this whole fight easier. To preserve PP, I'm using Body Slam against the Arbok, but this still takes 3 turns, unless I get a critical hit. Okay, we made it back to the final Gengar. I go for Blizzard, and finally I freeze. Because of that, I can 4-shot, well, I would have if she didn't use a Super Potion, buying herself more time 2 times in a row. But the writing's on the wall for Agatha because there is no way for her to get rid of this status condition. Gengar goes down, and Nidorina moves on to Lance. This battle is so easy compared to the last one. Thunderbolt for Gyarados, Blizzard for everything else. It is trivial. The only Pokemon that does damage is the Aerodactyl since it outspeeds. By now, you all know the champion strategy. I'm gonna underspeed the Alakazam. Nidorina at level 65 has 138 speed. It's not even close. So what I need to do is Blizzard the Sandslash for a one-shot and then Body Slam Alakazam and get paralysis. I should survive both of Alakazam's hits. It goes for Psychic here and it doesn't knock out, bringing me down to 28 hit points. That's why I have Body Slam, so I can heal on the Executor. But no luck for me in this run because I don't get paralysis. I failed a second time with Body Slam. In my third fight, Alakazam hit 2 Kinesises. This isn't going to work. In the fourth attempt, Body Slam doesn't paralyze again and Alakazam finishes me with Psychic. But in the fifth attempt, I get paralysis, knock out Alakazam, heal on Executor, and then start my sweep. I freeze the grass type, allowing me to rest up to full health before finishing it off. Magneton follows. This is another case where Earthquake would be really helpful. I have to use Blizzard, and it looks like it's going to 3-shot, allowing Magneton to roll the dice, and it gets the bad outcome for Nidorina, choosing Thunder Wave, inflicting paralysis. Now, I tried to use Rest after one Thunderbolt, but then Magneton gets a critical hit and Nidorina faints. I thought that this meant I had to go back through the wood chipper that is Alakazam, but then it misses Kinesis. Body Slam hits, unfortunately no paralysis. However, Alakazam misses a second Kinesis, giving me a free knockout. I'm on full health, so I can just go for Blizzard, freeze the Executor, knock it out for free as well. And then Magneton does not go for Thunder Wave, instead using Screech once, which was previously my strategy with the first stage Nidos. I thought maybe this would give Thunderbolt the one-shot on the Cloyster, but the answer is no. It goes for Ice Beam. Oh no, please don't let this fall apart because of a freeze. It doesn't. I use a second Thunderbolt and Cloyster goes down. With Flareon out of the way, Nidorina in its first playthrough gets a time of 56 minutes and 40 seconds, with 17 resets at level 66, with a game time of 3 hours and 13 minutes. Notice with Nidorino, it's starting the league only one level lower than Nidorina finished the game. This is because I was trying to ensure that I would get the outspeed on the champion's Alakazam, and that's achievable at a relatively low level. Then I don't need to waste a bunch of time getting paralysis, and it also sets up Nidorino for an easier sweep throughout the previous members. I even mimic Amnesia here against Lorelei, set it up, and then crush her team with Thunderbolt. I just want to say right now that it is really nice that Blizzard has 90% accuracy in Generation 1, because it makes it a very spammable move with these Nidos. It doesn't miss consistently, I don't take chip damage from Pokemon, and even though it has low base PP, in pretty much every case I have enough for the entire fight. There's not a lot of cases where I have to mimic a different move to knock out a Pokemon that is, say, a rock type. In the process, I get hit by Screech. It doesn't really matter though, there's so much anti-synergy on this team. Then Machamp comes out, it goes for Karate Chop, which doesn't apply the Screech debuff, but it still gets a critical hit. Yeah, that happened. Don't worry, Nidorino doesn't have problems in the next fight, and this is going to be the last time we see him for this entire video. Okay, Agatha. There is no difference between these Pokemon against her, because I still have to rely on Blizzard and hopefully get freezes, critical hits, things like that. And I also am just praying she doesn't get status conditions or roll Hypnosis, Psychic, or Dream Eater with her final Gengar. Essentially, I just wanted to spam Confuse Ray into my substitute or miss Hypnosis over and over again. Also, she can use Dream Eater when I'm not asleep, so that would also be acceptable. Unfortunately, in this case, she breaks my substitute. I sleep for too long. She goes for Psychic again, followed by another Psychic, and Nidorino goes down. Paralysis from Lick. Paralysis from Lick again. I make it back to the final Gengar, but I'm confused. I hit myself. She uses Hypnosis. It puts Nidorino to sleep. I was so close to knocking that Gengar out. It's really frustrating. Then it goes for Psychic, but Nidorino survives on 1 hit point. Gengar goes for Confuse Ray, which fails. I sleep. It fails another Confuse Ray. Then she goes for Dream Eater and Nidorino faints. Just about the worst fight against Agatha that I could have asked for. One thing you need to know is that Arbok can paralyze you with Glare through a substitute. This is so annoying. It's what happens to me in the next battle. I finish off her penultimate Pokemon, move on to the Gengar, it misses Hypnosis, uses Dream Eater when I'm not asleep, I can't be put to sleep now, and then I freeze Gengar. So both of these middle evolutions had a really bad attempt against Agatha in this playthrough, and both of them completely crushed Lance. By this point, my speed stat is enough to move first against the champion's Alakazam. The bad thing is that I'm not able to one-shot with Body Slam, so I have to two-shot, and I'm going to take damage here here anyway, but I do have rest so I can heal on the Executor. For whatever reason, I just don't. It hits me with Hypnosis and then wins with Barrage. I miss a Blizzard against Sandslash, it hits with Earthquake, so that's a reset. But in my third battle, I paralyze the Alakazam, it's unable to attack because of the status condition, and with full health against the Executor, I just spam Blizzard and knock it out. Magneton is kind to Nidorino, not going for Thunder Wave, so I finish it with 3 turns and then move on to Cloyster. After tanking 1 Screech, still Thunderbolt does not have enough damage to one-shot. I paralyze, but then Cloyster gets a critical hit with Ice Beam. Nidorino survives on 32 health, goes for Thunderbolt again, and finishes the champion's final useful Pokemon. It finishes the game with a time of 57 minutes and 7 seconds, with 10 resets, 1 blackout at level 68, with a game time of 3 hours and 27 minutes. The question is, what happened here? Why is Nidorina faster than Nidorino, despite the male Pokemon having the better stat distribution? This reminds me of what happened the first time I played Nidoqueen and Nidoking. Nidoqueen felt like it was the more consistent Pokemon, at least in a first playthrough. Higher defensive stats shore up for the fact that you don't know damage ranges precisely when you're first playing the game blind. And then the male species takes the advantage when you have the information that you need and everything's planned out. Still, the difference between these two was only 26 seconds, although Nidorina did have 7 more resets, which suggests that it might perform significantly better than Nidorino in the second run. But that's not really what's going on here. Look at this game time by trainer graph. What we can see here is that Nidorino's game time is higher than Nidorina's. So why would that be the case? Well, it's because I was grinding for the late game trying to get the outspeed on the Alakazam. This sacrificed too much time. So Nidorina took the advantage in this first playthrough because I knew that it wasn't going to outspeed Alakazam. Therefore, I played the more risky Body Slam strategy against the champion, which ended up giving it the win despite a terrible Agatha and many more resets throughout the run. This is another example of consistency robbing a Pokemon of a better time. Okay, let's start the follow-up runs. Before we get into the strategy though, I want to talk about a general principle that I learned from playing StarCraft 2 competitively. I was always the player that wanted to play, guess it, consistently. I wanted to have a solution to every single enemy strategy that was possible with one build. Here's the thing, that's just not really how strategy games work. You need to be flexible and able to pivot from one strategy to another, and you also need to be able to accept some risks. I think this is why so many StarCraft players became really good poker players after their esports careers ended. The basic idea goes like this. If you're going to play a build in StarCraft that solves the problems of every other enemy strategy, then it's most likely the case that you're going to water down all of your solutions to what the enemy can throw at you. Alternatively, you can play extremely decisively, getting some free wins, getting some really advantaged positions, or occasionally just instantly losing if, say, you don't have detection for one of these cloaked boys. I think this is analogous in Pokemon solo challenges. You can play consistently, but you're going to sacrifice your time as a result of that. And so in the end, the fundamental skill of being willing to accept risk is the thing that's going to push these times lower for every single Pokemon. The way I heard this articulated best was in a StarCraft 2 context. Someone said to me, you don't need to be able to win every way. You need to be able to win one way. If you've chosen a singular path to victory, then your strategy is by definition focused and not watered down. And that's really what shooting for consistency in Pokemon games is doing. It's watering down your chances for success. Think about it like this. With Nidorino, even if I make it past the Alakazam because I outspeed and I trained a few more levels, there is still the chance that I lose later into the fight. So why wouldn't I just focus on victory at a lower level? Paralysis is my path to victory. I don't need to outspeed because even if I did outspeed, I could still lose later into the fight. So I should just take the lower level path to victory because I know it saves a bunch of time in the best case scenario. And if I'm doing multiple playthroughs, why should I care about the worst scenario? In that case, I'll just do the run again. It's the same as losing to Dark Templars and then just simply queuing up a ladder game after smashing your keyboard. It has taken me 5.5 years to realize this, but what it really comes down to is in the end, if you're shooting for the best possible times, it's all about controlling your own emotions and persisting through discomfort. Maybe you have to restart because the champion beats you over and over again using an underspeed strategy. But if you're willing to restart the run, eventually things are going to work out and you're going to get a better time. So for Nidorino's second playthrough, I am not going to try to move first against the champion's Alakazam. Let's go through now and summarize this route very quickly. On Route 3, I fight the Lass. For Rival 2, Nidorino doesn't need Water Gun, Horn Attack and Double Kick are enough for this fight. But Nidorina, lacking Horn Attack, should run Water Gun here for a faster faster knockout on the Sandshrew. With Water Gun or Double Kick, I can fight the Seismic Hiker on Route 25 for slightly more experience. The next section of the game is largely unchanged and the same between these Pokemon. So let's skip ahead to Route 8. I can choose to either fight this Gambler or the Lass. I almost never go for her because her Pokemon have Sing and they can be really annoying. But in the case of the middle stage Nidos, fighting her has an advantage. I can one-turn both of her Pokemon using Double Kick, whereas I would have to two-turn both of the fire types on the Gambler's team using Bubble Beam. And because of that, the Lass is faster. Thanks to Zealouspawn here for making me look into this tiny nuance in this run. Without him, I definitely would have missed it. Hideout Candy, 2 Carbos for speed, Ice Beam over Bubble Beam, Rival 4. The Chandler are still inconsistent, but I have an 81.2% chance to 2-shot KO. And since I'm using Ice Beam, which has upside for freezes, this is good enough. On Cycling Road, I fight 4 trainers: Grimy, Weezing, Fight Ball. He's the cue ball with fighting types. I've started using this term behind the scenes to quickly refer to him. And finally, Biker Boss. I fight the cool trainer in Erica's gym, and with Ice Beam, the gym battle isn't that bad. There's going to be a brief difference to how we solve the rival in Sylph between these two Pokemon. Nidorino can fight him at a lower level because it outspeeds the Kadabra, but Nidorina needs to train to level 44 and then use 2 rare candies so that at level 46 it can move first against the Psychic type. The rest of this battle is fairly unstable because of damage ranges. Nidorino has a 2-shot on Sandslash and Cloyster, a 3-shot on Magneton, and a 52.4% chance to 2-shot the Flareon. Doing a little bit more training and using candies here gives Nidorina the advantage, a 63.5% chance to 1-shot the Sandslash and a 45.2% chance to 1-shot the Cloyster. It also has a 79.9% chance to 2-shot the Flareon, so overall this battle is actually more consistent for Nidorina just because it puts in a little bit more time. This is a trade-off between upsides and downsides. With Nidorina, I think the downside is too extreme if we go in with an underspeed on Kadabra, whereas with Nidorino, I think that the upside is enough to just go in with worse damage ranges on the other 3 Pokemon. From here, I'm going to talk about Nidorino's route, and then we'll wrap back around and talk about Nidorina. In this run, I had a bunch of bad luck against Rival 5, and I ended up resetting here 3 times before I finally defeated him. This was not a good mid-game. Next, I go to Koga's gym, and defeating the mandatory trainers here brings Nidorino up to level 47. Then, I use 6 rare candies, taking it up to level 53 before Koga. This is so when I mimic Psychic from Koga's Venonats, I can one-shot all of them and have an 89.9% chance to 2-shot the Venomoth. I took 1 reset here in this playthrough because of a special drop from the first Venonat. There is no way to get around this. This is the point in the run where we need to make the decision. What level do we fight the champion at? Either level 65 for the risky strategy or level 70 for the outspeed. If I decide to play risky, I fight Psych as well as this Swimmer before heading south to Cinnabar Island. And then before Blaine, I use 4 rare candies to be level 58. This way, I have a 48% chance to 2-shot the Ninetales and a 71% chance to 2-shot the Rapidash. I'm going to use Horn Drill for the Arcanine. Having 3 shots on the first 2 Pokemon is just a little bit too inconsistent. Once Blaine is defeated, I am on minimum battles for the remainder of the playthrough. Against Sabrina, I have lined things up so that here I am level 59 for the Alakazam, and I have an outspeed. Mimic Double Team and Blizzard for Giovanni. Rival 5 isn't that much of a threat. Even if I get paralyzed by Magneton, I can still win this battle, and that's what happens here. Now, since I'm fighting the champion at a lower level, Lorelei is more difficult than she would be at the higher level. This is a difference between these 2 playthroughs, but I also think I'm making a mistake here. I'm trying to mimic Amnesia and then finish her Pokemon with this. I don't think that I should be doing this. In retrospect, just going for the KOs seems like it's the safer play against her. And eventually in this playthrough, I reverted to that strategy and I ended up winning right away. I only have 1 word here: revenge. Agatha doesn't cause a reset in this playthrough, and then I make it to the champion at level 65. Paralyze the Alakazam, 2-shot Executor with Blizzard, 3-shot Magneton with Body Slam, 2-shot Cloyster with Thunderbolt, and Flareon is free. Using this strategy, I wasn't able to get as much of a time advantage as I was hoping for. I finished the game in 51 minutes and 22 seconds, with 12 resets at level 66 and a game time of 3 hours and 3 minutes. That was my 4th Nidorino playthrough, and at that point I was pretty frustrated not being able to get the results lower, so I decided to revert back to the more consistent strategy and see how it would perform in comparison with the level 65 finish. To have a higher level at the end of the game, I fight all of the people on Route 21 except the Magikarp guy, I fight 2 trainers inside of Cinnabar Mansion, and 4 people inside of Blaine's gym. That way I can be a higher level to fight him, but I'm still lower than I would be with the previous strategy. I need to delay using my rare candies. This also means I will not have the outspeed on Sabrina's Alakazam. I fight optional trainers inside of Giovanni's gym and then use 5 candies up to level 63 before fighting him. But the training is not done yet. I need to fight 4 people inside of Victory Road. This gives level 66 at the beginning of the Lorelei fight, which is 5 levels higher than I previously was. The damage ranges are so much better here. 2-shot on Dugong, 93.3% chance to 1-shot the Cloyster, 2-shot on Slowbro, Body Slam to 2-shot the Jinx, and an 89.1% chance to 2-shot the Lapras. I make it by her on my first attempt, but still I am slower than my previous run just because of all the additional training. But in this playthrough it pays off for Nidorino, because against the champion, unless I miss Blizzard on the Sandslash, I'm probably going to win. And I do here right away, taking a 4th reset. Pretty frustrating. I come back in. This time I finish off the Alakazam. I was hit by Kinesis, but I played the fight out, and it ended up working for me. Nidorino clocks in with a time of 50 minutes and 28 seconds, with 4 resets at level 70. This is a game time of 3 hours and 15 minutes. Okay, I'm human, and I really didn't want to play Nidorino anymore. After all, this result was fairly close to what I was hoping to get with the risky strategy. With it, I wanted a time of about 49:30, 49:44, something under 50 minutes, and while I didn't quite get Nidorino there, I still got very close. For now, I'm satisfied with this result. Coming back to Nidorina, I had accepted the fact that I was just going to play the safer strategy. I didn't want to put in the time of trying to get a risky run. After all, with this thing, the risk tends to be a little bit higher than with Nidorino just because it's slower. For the rival, I have to train to level 44 and then use 2 rare candies to get level 46 to outspeed the Kadabra. This doesn't mess up Koga because I can still use 4 rare candies before him and be level 53 for that fight to mimic Psychic. Before I played Nidorina, I quantified the amount of time that I was sacrificing playing the safer strategy, and I ended up being surprised. It's not as long as I was expecting. It tends to be in the range of 2 to 3 minutes with both of these Pokemon to do the additional training to finish at level 70 instead of level 65. I had an unlucky Koga during this playthrough and I reset to him 3 times before finally winning. However, Nidorina has an advantage over Nidoran Female because it learns Horn Drill, so I can teach this move and then solve Blaine with it. Still, I had 1 reset here. Pretty frustrating. I also got unlucky against Sabrina. All of these Pokemon need luck against her. In this case, it doesn't work out for Nidorina. But I think this is the more unlikely option because Sabrina in yellow version just isn't really that good. It would be nice if I could outspeed the Alakazam. There's definitely increased risk here for the female Pokemon, but in the end, there's no way to plan around it if I want to have a time-efficient run. I think the major advantage of playing the more consistent strategy is just having a better time against Lorelei and being a higher level throughout the league. In my anecdotal experience with these runs, it really makes a difference. And if you have a limited number of times to play the run, I think there is an argument here to playing the more conservative strategy. Of course, if you have unlimited time, then just play the riskier strategy. At the higher level, Nidorina ends up beating all of the Elite Four members without an additional reset. And then it moves on to the champion and gets very lucky. Blizzard on Sandslash, Kinesis from Alakazam, but Body Slam critical hits one-shotting. This is another way that we have upside with these Pokemon. Then while I do get hit by Hypnosis from Executor, I still do knock it out without taking very much damage because Nidorina wakes up very quickly. Magneton tries to use Thunderbolt, luckily not Thunder Wave. I use Rest, heal up, Body Slam, knock it out over 2 turns, Thunderbolt one-shots Cloyster because I got badge boosted by both Kinesis and Screech, and then Flareon is free. With Nidorina, I clock in with an underwhelming time of 54 minutes and 55 seconds, with 5 resets at level 70 with a game time of 3 hours and 30 minutes. This result is 1 minute and 45 seconds ahead of my first playthrough. In a lot of my Versus videos, I really do strive to play the same number of runs with each Pokemon, but today with the middle evolutions, I don't feel that that's necessary. They are so similar to each other that I have a really good read on how these Pokemon are going to play. I'm ranking Nidorino with the more conservative strategy, and I'm also going to do the same with Nidorina. Maybe at some point in the future, when I get the yellow version itch, I'll come back, try and re-rank these two with the riskier strategies, and see if I can shave off 2 to 3 minutes of time. For now, it's time to put the middle evolutions away and move on to their final forms. For this section, I am not going to jump back and forth. We are going to do Nidoqueen all at once, and then we're going to move over to Nidoking. For base stats, the Queen has 90 HP, 82 attack, 87 defense, 76 speed, 75 special, and a 14.84% chance to crit. We also have the additional ground typing for the first time in the video. This is a double-edged sword. It's both a blessing and a curse, although it definitely leans heavily towards blessing. For starting set, Nidoqueen has Tackle, Scratch, Tail Whip, and Body Slam. This move solves the problems that the other female species had up until this point in the video. They just didn't have a good attacking move in the early game. Nothing that could compete with Nidoking's Horn Attack. But Nidoqueen's Body Slam changes that dynamic. Like all of the other species in this run, we have to level up to 12 to get Double Kick in order to defeat Brock. It would have been really nice if the final forms started with Double Kick instead of a move like Tackle or Tail Whip. This would make Brock possible on less battles, but in the end, with a medium slow growth rate, doing some early game training isn't the worst thing in the world. From Brock until Rival 2, I fight minimum battles and minimum Pokemon, and I don't waste time trying to pick up additional TMs like Water Gun or Mega Punch. Body Slam is good enough to cover for Water Gun, and it's already better than Mega Punch. Against Rival 2, I 2-shot Spearow. I have a 65.8% chance to 2-shot the Sandshrew, a guaranteed 1 turn on Rattata, and a 2 turn on Eevee. From here, Nidoqueen is going to fight only 5 more optional trainers in the entire playthrough, and none of them come before Misty. I was restarting the entire playthrough for a result here with 0 resets to Misty, but she is fairly difficult for Nidoqueen. This is the first moment where the ground typing is a significant disadvantage. I have a 30% chance to one-shot the Staryu using Body Slam at level 23, and I have a 26% chance to 2-shot the Starmie. The problem is that Bubble Beam does between 45 and 53% damage with a single hit. There are 3 paths to victory here. Number 1, Nidoqueen gets paralysis with Body Slam. Number 2, Nidoqueen crits with Body Slam. Number 3, Misty's Starmie just chooses Water Gun instead of Bubble Beam. Of the 5 remaining optional trainers, the first one is next. It's the Gentleman on the SSN to get access to this rare candy. Unlike Misty, Surge is an opportunity to show off the ground type's fantastic defensive prowess. We're immune to Thunderbolt, and he doesn't know that, so his Raichu is still going for it. With Nidoqueen, its higher base stats make the wrapping last fairly consistent. It has a 78.2% chance to one-shot the Oddish using Body Slam. Once I reach Celadon City, I can pick up the TM for Ice Beam. This is where I should talk about the final stages and their expanded TM and HM learn sets. You will notice that I have not taught Nidoqueen Dig yet. This is because the final forms, which are ground types, cannot learn Dig, but they do get Earthquake and Fissure. Why? I don't understand this choice. It makes me so frustrated. Having an earlier ground move would be really nice. We do, however, get access to additional moves now, like Submission Counter, Seismic Toss. Lovely, just the stuff you want to be using. Also, Fire Blast, Rock Slide, and Surf. It's interesting that Nidoqueen gets access to these, but it's not going to make use of any of them. Previously, I would have taught Nidoqueen Ice Beam now in the place of Bubble Beam, but in this playthrough, I'm going to hold off on making that choice. Ice Beam isn't needed for the rival in Sylph since I have access to Thunderbolt. I could see someone choosing to use Rock Slide for this section of the game to one-shot the Ghastly in Pokemon Tower. However, 2-shotting with Thunderbolt is more than enough. And I don't think that the time wasted picking up Rock Slide is worth it. Plus, then I have to give up one of my current moves, and I really don't want to. Sylph is next, and I just realized that there are actually 6 optional trainers after that point earlier. The Gentleman was the first of 6. The second of 6 is this Machoke trainer. I always consider him mandatory since I fight him in pretty much every playthrough. You can come back and get these items after defeating Giovanni, and then you don't need to battle him. However, I want Earthquake right away. I teach it in the place of Body Slam, and then Ice Beam in the place of Double Kick. I'm holding on to Bubble Beam here very intentionally. 2 more optional trainers, the Triantist as well as the Protein Scientist. That gets Nidoqueen to level 35. With 2 candies, I can go up to 37, giving it a speed stat of 83. Damage ranges aren't great against Rival 5. I have to 2-shot the Sandslash and the Cloyster, but after that it's easy. Earthquake one-shots everything. And because of how experience lines up here with the medium slow growth rate, once I knock out the Magneton, I level up to 38, getting enough speed to move first against the Kadabra and one-shot without taking damage. So provided Nidoqueen beats the first 2 Pokemon in this fight, it's going to win unless it's been afflicted by Sand Attack. On Cycling Road, I fight the Biker Boss for additional experience. This is the second to last optional trainer. In the Safari Zone, I pick up a Carbos, but this is not quite enough for Nidoqueen. I have to backtrack to the department store and buy myself 2 more of these items because they are critical for Nidoqueen's late game. I should have done this right before going to the Safari Zone, but I forgot. This trip doesn't take me too far off the beaten path though because I fight Erica next, defeating the Cool Trainer with Ice Beam before taking her on. Ice Beam has a 58.5% chance to one-shot the Tangela, and then I have guarantees on both the Weepinbell and the Gloom. Theoretically, this is a place where the ground type is a disadvantage for Nidoqueen, but it doesn't play out that way practically. There's another small nuisance here, which is I need to talk to the Warden, grab the candy from his house before going into Koga's gym. Then I have 5 rare candies. After defeating the mandatory Hypno, I level up to 43, and I can use all 5 to go to 48 before Koga. Earthquake has a one-shot on the first Venonat, an 89% chance on the second one, and a 54% chance on the third. A guaranteed 2-shot on the Venomoth, which does between 42 and 50% damage with Psychic. This is not the best Koga fight out there, but I'll take it, especially when I'm trying to go this fast with Nidoqueen. And believe me, we are pushing for great results. Also, Venomoth can just go for Leech Life and give you a free win, which is what happens here. Heading south to Cinnabar Island, we fight the final optional trainer of this run, Psyche the Fisher. I chose to fight Sabrina next, but I could see you wanting to play Blaine and then Sabrina just have the special boost for this fight. Either way, I don't think it really matters. You're not going to move first against the Alakazam, and as we've covered before, Sabrina is just incompetent. Plus, even fighting her before Blaine, I have an 80.3% chance to one-shot the Alakazam, and it can only one-shot Nidoqueen if it gets one of the highest possible rolls with Psychic on a regular hit. For once in this video, we don't have to go to Horn Drill to solve Blaine. He is so simple. One-shot on Ninetales and Rapidash with Earthquake, and a 2-shot on the Arcanine with Upside, a 32.3% chance to one-shot. I made a little bit of a mistake here against Giovanni. I forgot to use 2 rare candies. I caught it very quickly, reset right away before even going into the battle, then used the candies and fought him. Without these candies at level 51, I have a 23.6% chance to knock out the Nidoqueen in one hit, and a 71.6% chance to knock out the Nidoking in a single hit. Their Earthquakes do between 51 and 60%, and 60 and 70%. So unless he guard specs and the Persian doesn't attack, I'm going to lose if I'm not level 53. But after using the rare candies, I have a 76% chance to one-shot the Nidoqueen and a guarantee on the Nidoking. I have kept Bubble Beam for this fight because Earthquake cannot one-shot the Rhydon unless I get a critical hit. But with Bubble Beam, I have a guarantee. And so for the first time in this video, we can just rely on damage. We don't need to resort to double team. I am playing this run very confidently, as you can see as I fight Rival 6, because I went into this battle without healing. I just don't need to. Ice Beam one-shots Sandslash and Execute, Thunderbolt one-shots Cloyster, and Earthquake one-shots Magneton, Kadabra, and Flareon. The only thing that goes wrong here is I get a Gen 1 miss with Thunderbolt against Cloyster, and then it uses Aurora Beam. I'm very happy that it didn't go for Clamp and maybe get a critical hit. It did drop my attack by 1 stage, which is a pretty bad outcome. Still, I have enough damage to one-shot the Magneton. The Kadabra also goes down in a single hit, and even the Flareon. So despite getting very bad luck, Nidoqueen still crushes this battle. In Victory Road, I have to remember to pick up the rare candy. I didn't in an earlier playthrough with the Nidoqueen, and I ended up suffering in the late game because of it. I use this rare candy right now before Lorelei to be level 56, but I'll talk about the implications of this candy's usage later on. The unfortunate thing here is that the Dugong wants to now use Bubble Beam and Aurora Beam as well as Rest. This is because of our additional ground type. So unlike the previous species, which had an easy time getting by her first 2 Pokemon, Nidoqueen is a little bit more fragile here. If she chooses Aurora Beam or Bubble Beam and gets the stat drop, I am just going to reset because it doesn't make sense trying to play the fight out. Also, she can critical hit, which is what happens in my first battle. I take a reset after that. Look at how much damage it did. Still, the Dugong is not an excellent Pokemon for her. There's lots of things that can go my way, like paralysis from Thunderbolt, preventing it from attacking. I knock it out in 2 turns with Thunderbolt, and then for Cloyster, I don't have a 1 hit. But Nidoqueen is doing between 82 and 97% damage, making it fairly likely that Lorelei is going to heal the Cloyster with the Super Potion, giving me a free knockout. The damage ranges from here are not good enough to just spam Thunderbolt like the previous Pokemon. The reason is Nidoqueen's level is just so much lower. I have to 2-shot the Slowbro with Thunderbolt, I can 1-shot the Jinx with Earthquake, but then it would 3-shot the Lapras. This isn't acceptable because both Blizzard and Hydro Pump do between 68 and 81% damage because of our ground type. This is another instance where it's working against us defensively. Because of this, I have to take the risky strategy against Lorelei, mimicking Amnesia, setting it up against the Slowbro to +4, and then knocking out her final Pokemon. This is the point in the run where Nidoqueen's defensive stats actually matter, because I can shrug off Surfs from the Slowbro better than Nidoking can, and this makes a big difference between the 2 playthroughs. Nidoqueen pulls through against Lorelei after one quick reset to the Dugong. Agatha is the next trainer of course, and now with Earthquake I can one-shot all of her ghosts, making her irrelevant. I taught Nidoqueen Blizzard for this fight in the place of Mimic. This is so I can one-shot the Golbat. It's not a guarantee, only a 60.5% chance, but it is still better than using Ice Beam. Now it's time to reflect on the consequence of doing so few optional battles during this run and using rare candies fairly early on. At level 58, Nidoqueen has a 71.6% chance to knock out the Gyarados in a single hit with Thunderbolt. If it attacks, it's going to use Hydro Pump because of our ground typing, and that move does between 73 and 86% damage. And I can't believe it, but I fail the damage range twice against the Gyarados, taking 2 resets here. I have to say this was pretty discouraging, and then for the 3rd time in a row I missed the damage range on Gyarados. Luckily this time Lance uses a Hyper Potion, allowing me to re-roll, and this time Nidoqueen one-shots. From there, Blizzard on all of his remaining Pokemon. Yes, it is better against the Aerodactyl than Ice Beam or Thunderbolt. Blizzard has a 76.2% chance to one-shot, whereas the other two have to two-hit. Okay, at the beginning of the champion fight, please look at my speed. 154. That's not enough to move first against Alakazam, even though I bought 2 more Carbos in the department store. But look at Nidoqueen's experience. It's about to level up. So once I use Blizzard and one-shot the Sandslash, it levels up to 60 and gets 157 speed. This lets it move first against Alakazam and one-shot with Earthquake. Then Blizzard two-shots the Exeggutor. This is slightly less annoying than with the earlier Pokemon because it can also use Leech Seed here due to my ground type. This is the second instance that I've mentioned since Surge where the ground type is good for us defensively. With Exeggutor finished, I can use Earthquake to one-shot Magneton, Thunderbolt to two-shot Cloyster. There is some downside here, but today I paralyze, it goes for Aurora Beam, doesn't do enough damage, and then I finish it. Unlike the previous Pokemon where Flareon used Reflect and wasted time, Earthquake just one-hits. And Nidoqueen achieves a time of 37 minutes and 5 seconds, with 4 resets at level 61, with a game time of 2 hours and 23 minutes. Despite this not being a perfect run, and the fact that I only did a total of 2 runs with Nidoqueen, this time is still exceptional. And I can't wait for you to see where Nidoqueen is going to end up ranking in the tier list, but for now I'm going to leave you hanging for just a little bit longer because we have to talk about Nidoking. For base stats, it has 81 HP, 92 attack, 77 defense, 85 speed, 75 special, and a 16.41% chance to crit. Like Nidoqueen, it gets a move at the beginning of the game which is better than Horn Attack, and in this case it's Thrash. And this move is exceptional for solo runs, because once you select it, it continues being used until it confuses the user. In Generation 1, this takes between 3 and 4 turns. This count was decreased to 2 to 3 starting in Generation 2. This move is exceptional for knocking out enemy Pokemon very quickly, especially on weak trainers teams where you know the number of turns that it's going to take to finish their Pokemon. By using this move, Nidoking is going to save a bunch of fractions of seconds throughout this playthrough, and that will add up by the end of the run. Brock with Double Kick at level 12, but then on Route 3 I can start making different choices because I have access to Thrash. Instead of fighting the Lass, which has been more time efficient for the previous species, in this case I can fight the Bugcatcher. Thrash has a one-hit on every single one of his Pokemon. I could risk it here, but there's no reason to. Horn Attack can one-hit the Weedle at the beginning of the fight, and then I can use Thrash for the final 3 Pokemon. For the rival on Nugget Bridge, I can two-shot the Spearow using Horn Attack, but then I have to make a choice. Thrash can two-shot the Sandshrew, or I can 3-hit with Horn Attack with upside for a 30% chance of a 2-shot. I just went with Horn Attack, wanting to avoid confusion, and it ends up working out. Double Kick is great against the final 2 Pokemon, so the rival really isn't that good. I should also mention here that going to low health on the rival is actually a good thing, because then on Nugget Bridge, if I get damaged, I can use Red Bar for the rest of the battles, which allows the player to skip the time that's allocated for cries, so I'll save some time over the next section of the game. Red Bar isn't as good as it was in Red and Blue, but it is still a thing in Yellow. By the way, for my solo challenges, I do not plan around this in most cases. If it happens, and I'm happy, but if it doesn't, I'm going to continue playing. Minimum battles on Route 24 and 25 gives me level 23 by the time I backtrack to Cerulean City. Then I take on the Rocket for a little bit of additional experience. I have done all of this on Red Bar, which is really satisfying. Heading into the gym, I can now fight the Junior Trainer, which is mandatory, and level up to 24. This lets Nidoking Nidoking use 1 rare candy to go to 25 before taking on Misty. The damage rounding threshold here is critical. At level 24, Thrash has a 1-hit on the Staryu and a 41.2% chance to 2-shot the Starmie. But at level 25, we have a 1-hit on Staryu and a 2-shot on Starmie. There's some downside here. The Starmie gets an X defend and then potentially survives a hit, but we could also crit, and even if Nidoking gets confused, it can still reroll for damage on the next turn and knock out the Starmie. From this point on, Nidoking needs to battle 2 more optional trainers. There is a 3rd optional that I think is worth it, and then there's a 4th one which we ended up cutting. On the SSN, we get the first of these, which is the Gentleman to get 1 more candy. In the mid game, I do make a different choice with Nidoking just to show it off for all of you, which is taking Rock Slide before the Chandler and Pokemon Tower. This gives me 1-hits on all of their Pokemon. That's 4 turns against the Ghastly instead of 8 turns with Thunderbolt. If you calculate in the time that it takes to pick up the Rock Slide TM as well as teach the Rock Slide TM, and then the chance that it could miss, I think that these 2 strategies are roughly equivalent. Although losing here because of paralysis or something like that is always a risk with Nidoking. Remember, it is a little bit squishier than Nidoqueen is. Overall though, I think this is an optional part of the route. I don't think you need to do it, and I think if you do, you don't sacrifice that much time. Next, we go to Sylph and fight the second of the optional trainers, the guy with Machoke, to get access to Earthquake. I teach it in the place of Thrash, and then Ice Beam in the place of Rock Slide. The 3rd optional trainer is the Protein Scientist, because his experience is critical against the rival. Starting this fight at level 34 does not make Ice Beam or Thunderbolt any more likely to one-shot the Sandslash or Cloyster. I'm just gonna have to 2-shot these Pokemon. The issue is that Cloyster can do a ton of damage with Clamp. A single hit does between 25 and 31% damage, and Aurora Beam does between 44 and 53%. Of course, the Cloyster also views Withdraw as super effective, so it can just do nothing and then get knocked out. The problem is, if you take damage from the Cloyster, then Kadabra is going to move first. If we skip the Scientist, then we don't level up before it, but if we fight the Scientist, then we get level 36 prior to the Kadabra, we outspeed and one-shot with Earthquake. Using this strategy, occasionally you'll get resets here, and it was my first one in this playthrough. But whenever you do reset to the rival, it's very fast since you're losing to the Cloyster early into the battle. If we cut the Scientist, then we would lose late into the battle against the Kadabra and waste a bunch more time. With Sylph completed, this is where we could fight 1 more optional trainer, which is the Biker Boss on Cycling Road. I don't think he's necessary, and in the final rundown of things, Zealous Pawn also removed him. Zealous Pawn is also not fighting the Scientist in Sylph. I don't like underspeeding the Kadabra, so I refused to do that. Instead, I modified things in the mid-game just a little bit. Inside Erica's gym, once defeating the Cool Trainer, I can use 5 rare candies to bring Nidoking up to level 44. Then Ice Beam has a 1-shot on Tangela, which otherwise would have been a 2-hit. And I was going to use those rare candies in Koga's gym anyway. Even if I use the candies earlier, Nidoking is still level 45 for Koga. Can one-shot the first Venonat, a 76.4% chance on the second one, and a 37.8% chance on the third. It's got a guaranteed 2-hit on Venomoth, plus it outspeeds, and Psychic only does between 49 and 58% damage. Blaine gets crushed with Earthquake. 1-hit, 1-hit, 2-hit. Sabrina gets crushed with Earthquake. 1-hit, 1-hit, 76.4% chance on Alakazam. It does outspeed, and it can knock us out with Psychic, but with the same special stat as Nidoqueen, the odds here are the same. Inside Giovanni's gym, I used 3 rare candies after the final mandatory trainer. At level 51, Nidoking has a 65.7% chance to one-shot Giovanni's Nidoqueen. There are 2 ways to lose this fight: Slash from Persian followed by Earthquake from Nidoqueen, or a critical hit from Nidoqueen. But both of these outcomes are fairly unlikely, because I have a high chance to knock out the Nidoqueen. In Victory Road, I pick up 1 more rare candy, but this strictly isn't required for Nidoking. I think that this one should be skipped because going into the battle against Lorelei at level 54 doesn't really help. Although it gives a beautiful synergy, which is after every single final Pokemon, Lorelei, Bruno, Agatha, and Lance's aces, I am going to level up before the next fight. This is useful for Pokemon that need badge boosts, but Nidoking doesn't. Although it does have to go through what is an absolutely terrible Lorelei battle. I posted this result from Nidoking so that Zealous Pawn and Austin could see. I got a time of 40 minutes and 48 seconds with 14 resets. This is because Lorelei completely destroyed my Nidoking run. Lower defensive stats mean, unlike Nidoqueen, I don't have the same tolerance to getting hit by moves that are super effective. And just like Nidoqueen, we need to mimic Amnesia, set it up, and then one-shot the Lapras with Thunderbolt. Otherwise, Blizzard has a maximum damage roll of 91%. I anticipated that this was going to be a terrible battle, and I took some damage from the Dugong because it went for a Bubble Beam. It also dropped my speed, and I was just frustrated, so I kept playing. I make it to the Slowbro, Mimic Amnesia, it goes for Withdraw. Okay, that's perfect. I go for another Amnesia, it sets up its own. Then I go for another one, and in this case, the Slowbro just doesn't attack, so I continued setting up. Eventually it goes for Psychic, but Nidoking survives on 4 hit points. I knock it out, Earthquake the Jinx, and one-shot the Lapras, beating Lorelei on my first attempt. As soon as this happened, I knew that this was going to be the run that was going in the video. Nidoking does have a slightly worse range against Lance's Gyarados. I'm starting this fight at level 57, so I have a 63.6% chance to one-shot, but if I do, I just sweep his team with Blizzard. And unlike Nidoqueen, I don't get unlucky here. At level 58, I am faster than the champion's Alakazam. I one-shot Sandslash with Blizzard. Earthquake takes care of the weak Psychic type. Blizzard can two-shot the Executor, but I missed the damage range here. Luckily, it's just whiffing Leech Seeds. Earthquake Magneton, Thunderbolt Cloyster for a two-shot. I do tank an Ice Beam here. It could have frozen or critical hit, but it didn't. So, Nidoking gets a time of 35 minutes and 13 seconds, with one reset at level 59. This is a game time of 2 hours and 18 minutes. Okay, let's update the tier list to add in the middle evolutions and then re-rank Nidoking and Nidoqueen. Nidorina was able to earn itself a placement in the D tier ahead of Pokemon like Rapidash, Charmander, and Bellsprout, behind Kadabra, Squirtle, and Gyarados. By the way, there's some weird rankings there that you're going to be confused about. Why is Gyarados so bad? Scott, isn't that an amazing Pokemon? No, it starts with only Tackle, unlike in Red and Blue where it gets Dragon Rage at the beginning. It also starts those games with Hydro Pump. I don't know why they nerfed Gyarados so much in Yellow version. Could they just really not stand people hacking in Gyaradoses at low levels with Game Sharks? I guess? Or maybe it's that wild Gyarados show up and they wanted to make sure that they didn't have ridiculously broken movesets from the start? I don't know. Anyways, Gyarados is not very good in Yellow version. The same thing is true about Kadabra. It starts with only Teleport and Kinesis. It doesn't get Confusion. This is not the case in Pokemon Red and Blue. Another very strange change. So that's why Nidorina was almost able to beat those two. On the other hand, Bellsprout and Charmander are actually pretty solid first stage Pokemon, so that's why their results are so close to middle evolutions. Rapidash will get a re-ranking stream at some point. It definitely deserves better results. But it's a fire type. I don't think it's going to climb too far in the tier list. Nidorino had better results, but still not enough to earn itself a C tier position. Instead, it takes the second spot in the D tier, just behind Bulbasaur. I think that beating out Arbok and Weezing is a pretty nice result for this middle evolution. And now the moment of truth. Where are Nidoqueen and Nidoking going to place with their new times? When I played them before, Nidoking had a time of 41 minutes and 19 seconds, which is third spot in the A tier. Nidoqueen had a time which was very close, 42 minutes and 53 seconds. This put it in the middle of the A tier. Both of these Pokemon are going to get major upgrades to their time today, and I'm really thankful for that because the A tier is getting quite cluttered. With their new results, Nidoking comes in rank number 1, beating out Victory Bell, and Nidoqueen falls short of this, but it takes the third overall spot. I should talk about Victory Bell here for just one moment. It has a time of 36 minutes and 27 seconds. I think that I'll be able to crush that time with Victory Bell when I come back and play it again on stream. I've learned a lot since I did that playthrough, and it's pretty stale at this point. Still, with that result, Victory Bell was able to hold the first place spot in my tier list for literal years. We all know that Nidoking is good, after all it is the speedrunning Pokemon of choice in Generation 1. But Victory Bell is the Pokemon in the S tier that has surprised me the most. Poliwhirl being the honorable mention in that category since it's a middle evolution and it's just exceptional in this game. Before I close out this video, I want to mention one more thing, and that's the results that other people were able to get with these Pokemon. Specifically Austin and Zealous Pawn, who helped me optimize both Nidoqueen and Nidoking. With Nidoking, Austin got a time of 33 minutes and 38 seconds with 3 resets at level 59 with a game time of 2 hours and 9 minutes. He got an incredible first Nidoqueen playthrough with a time of 35 minutes and 17 seconds. That is 4 seconds slower than my final Nidoking time. I should mention here that both Austin and Zealous Pawn are much better players than I am, and I am so grateful to have them helping me out with these yellow runs. Zealous Pawn got a Nidoking time of 34 minutes and 25 seconds. Now I played a total of 5 Nidoking playthroughs for this video, and prior to that I played more. The reason I'm going to stop here, at least for now, is because Nidoking already has the top ranking spot. Also, I am getting very close to including every Pokemon Pokemon in this yellow tier list. I want to get there before the end of the year. Right now, we have 134 Pokemon ranked. So before December 31st of this year, I am going to finish ranking the remaining 17 species. If you support me on Patreon or through YouTube memberships, thank you so much. It allows me to do this work. Now, if you've made it this far, you're incredible. I'll see you in my next video.